Hey guys, tonight we slip through a half-open marble gate in Lahore Fort, where the air smells like crushed rose petals and the last whispers of a 17th century courtesan's gossip. You're barefoot, because the Mughals insisted on it, feeling every moon-cool tile underfoot as you dodge the chowkidar's swinging lantern. Pro tip, if he catches you, you'll be sentenced to a fate worse than unsubscribed YouTube channels, eternal rose pruning duty. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Shout your location and local time in the comments, especially if you're listening from someplace Shah Jahan's architects never imagined, like a high-rise with a broken AC. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Ahead, the Char Bagh garden unfolds like a Persian carpet dipped in starlight. Those four quadrants. Not just pretty symmetry, they're a cosmic cheat sheet. The Mughals believed replicating paradise on Earth would trick the angels into hanging around. Spoiler, it worked until the British showed up with lawn chairs and bad manners. You brush past a shisham tree planted the year Akbar's favorite elephant sat on a French ambassador. Historians still argue whether it was diplomacy or just really poor zoo etiquette. To your left, a canal glints with smuggled Venetian glass beads, swirling into the exact pattern of the Pleiades on Shah Jahan's birthday. But here's the quirky bit, the head engineer got fired for insisting the stars were out of alignment. Turns out his astrolabe was sabotaged by a jealous apprentice who later fled to Goa and opened a very suspicious spice shop. A nightingale's cry slices the air, or is it one of Jahangir's infamous mechanical songbirds? The emperor had them installed to impress visitors, though the gears constantly jammed with saffron smuggled by the palace eunuchs. Yes, this is how Holland's tulip mania began. No, the Dutch ever admitted it. You crouch to touch a petal, whoops. That's datura metal, the queen's plaything. One sniff and you'd hallucinate your way into a promotion, or a shallow garden grave. Your fingers trace the edge of a star-shaped fountain, its tiles still warm from the afternoon sun. This isn't just decorative, it's celestial cartography in stone. The Mughals didn't just build gardens, they weaponized geometry. Those 8-pointed patterns under your feet? They're scaled replicas of the Orion constellation, aligned so precisely that on the summer solstice, the shadow of the Lahore Fort's highest minaret pierces straight through the fountain's center like a sundial's needle. Try explaining that to your HOA when they complain about your lawn ornaments. A breeze carries the sharp, citrusy scent of Kiora, the flower that fueled an entire empire's perfume addiction. Over by the Cypress Avenue, a crooked tree leans at a 12-degree angle. That's not bad landscaping, it's the legacy of Emperor Jahangir's great astrolabe incident of 1607. His astronomers had spent months plotting the perfect celestial alignment for the garden's central axis until the royal elephant, drunk on fermented mangoes, stumbled into the observation platform. The head mathematician quit on the spot and became a shepherd. Historians still argue whether the elephant was genuinely intoxicated or just protesting unsafe working conditions. You kneel to examine a patch of unusually vibrant grass. Congratulations, you found the infamous drunkard's lawn, where noblemen secretly tested the strength of opium-laced wine. The groundskeeper would measure how far they staggered before collapsing, then adjust the garden's pathways accordingly. This also explains why some walkways suddenly widen for no apparent reason. Nearby, a carved jasmine vine hides a darker secret. Its buds only release fragrance when rubbed counterclockwise, the same motion used by poisoners to grind nightshade into the emperor's sherbet. A rustle in the bushes reveals a descendant of the fort's original talking parrots. These birds were trained to recite Persian poetry, and also to tattle on courtiers who skimmed funds from the garden budget. One particularly vindictive macaw caused 3 executions before someone taught it to say "just kidding" in Sanskrit. As you walk away, your shadow stretches unnaturally long across the lawn, another Mughal optical illusion, using precisely angled marble slabs to manipulate light. It's said the architects did this so even the emperor's enemies would appear diminished in his presence. The crunch of gravel underfoot gives way to something softer, a carpet of fallen gull-e-lala petals, each one stained at the edges like aged parchment. You've entered the tulip quarter, where the air hums with the ghosts of 1,000 stolen bulbs. These flowers weren't just decorations, they were currency, contraband, and occasionally, Collateral in palace coups. That oddly stunted row near the sundial? That's where Shah Jahan's head eunuch, Abdul Karim, buried the bulbs he'd secretly swapped with inferior Dutch imports, pocketing the difference to fund his legendary mehfil parties where wine flowed from fountain spouts. The subsequent tulip blight in Amsterdam? Pure coincidence? Probably. Ahead, a lattice screen casts tiger-striped shadows across your path, the Jali of whispers, designed so concubines could overhear garden plots, both horticultural and political, without being seen. Press your ear to the warm stone and you might catch echoes of the great saffron scandal of 1632, when head gardener Murad Ali was caught grafting crocus stamens onto common marigolds. The punishment? Forced to wear a garland of his own counterfeit flowers until the dye bled into his beard permanently. Historians still argue whether this inspired the later tradition of Mughal courtiers wearing floral perfumes. Or just really specific revenge. Your toe nudges a half-buried terracotta pot, one of thousands secretly manufactured to smuggle prized Shirazi roses to French perfumers. The Mughals guarded these cuttings more fiercely than treasury gold, which made the head eunuch's side hustle particularly audacious. He'd hollow out his ceremonial mace, stuff it with damp moss and cuttings, then accidentally leave it behind during diplomatic visits. The French thought they were getting state secrets. They got florists' catalogues instead. A sudden flutter of wings, one of Jahangir's descendant parrots lands on a nearby neem branch, eyeing you with what can only be described as avian skepticism. These birds were originally trained to scream "Water the azaleas" at dawn, until one particularly clever specimen started adding, "Or the emperor gets no mangoes today." The resulting chaos saw 3 gardeners executed before anyone realized the parrot had been bribed with pistachios by a rival florist. As you turn to leave, your sleeve catches on a thorny vine, the infamous Zakmi Gulab, wounded rose. Its petals blush deeper red when touched, leading court poets to claim the shrubs fed on lovers' sighs. The truth was more practical, clever grafting with Rubia tinctorum, the same root used to dye imperial uniforms. Touch one now, and your fingertips will stain sunset orange for days. The Mughal equivalent of a security ink tag. A faint gurgle pulls you toward the water pavilion, where marble channels twist in hypnotic spirals, but don't be fooled by the serene surface. These are the infamous singing canals, engineered to carry coded messages through water vibrations. That low hum vibrating in your molars? That's the hydraulic equivalent of a Mughal slack channel, once used to warn concubines about surprise inspections. Pro tip: the pitch changes if you step on the third tile from the northeast corner, a trick eunuchs used to eavesdrop on treasonous gossip. Your reflection fragments in the diamond-shaped central pool, an intentional disorientation tactic. Architects designed it so conspirators meeting here could never be certain who else might be watching from which angle. The real party trick? The water level automatically rises when someone lies, thanks to a hidden mechanism linked to voice stress patterns. 2 bad Aurangzeb dismantled it after catching his own ministers fibbing about, well, everything. Historians still argue whether this was protopolygraph technology or just really aggressive plumbing. A mossy spout dribbles oddly fragrant water, that's the remains of the Rosewater espionage network. Spies would soak messages in attar, then float them downstream as perfume samples. The receiving agent could read the communique by holding it to candlelight, revealing text written in lemon juice. Quirky side effect. This led to the first recorded case of industrial espionage when a French merchant reverse-engineered the formula and started selling Mughal miracle toner in Marseille. That suspiciously dry patch of limestone? That's where the legendary Tears of Nur Jahan fountain once stood, its basin filled not with water but liquid silver during full moons. The Empress commissioned it after her favorite greyhound died, insisting the metal would better reflect her grief. It worked a little too well. The reflective surface accidentally revealed an assassination plot when conspirators' dagger glints gave them away. The fountain was melted down to mint coins bearing the dog's profile, much to the Grand Vizier's annoyance. As you trail fingers through the water, your fingertips brush something cold and metallic, one of Shah Jahan's ice coins, discs thrown into pools to chill them for summer parties. Workers would harvest winter ice from the Himalayas, pack it in salt and straw, then sell the meltwater to nobles as moon-cool tonic. The scam collapsed when someone noticed this Himalayan ice had bits of deli market straw in it. The air grows heavier here, sweetened with a cloying floral scent that sticks to the back of your throat. You've wandered into the moonlight garden, where the real party plants only unfurl their petals after dark. That milky white vine twisting up the trellis? Rakhi Rani, the queen of night, whose blossoms emit an intoxicating fragrance designed to lure moths and occasionally, over-curious courtiers. Touch one, and your fingertips will tingle for hours, a side effect of the neurotoxin the royal gardeners applied to deter thieves. The antidote? A paste made from crushed emeralds and goat milk. They really didn't want people stealing their flowers. Ahead, a sunken bed of velvety purple bloom seems to pulse faintly in the dim light. These are Zaha-Nisbat, the poison relatives, genetically engineered through generations of selective breeding to resemble harmless violets. The Mughal queens cultivated them in secret, not for assassinations, usually, but as a botanical lie detector. Offer a guest tea near these flowers, and if they nervously crushed a petal between their fingers, the resulting sap would stain their hands blue for days. Suspiciously convenient for identifying traitors at the next poetry recital. Your foot sinks slightly into the soft earth. This entire section was built atop a hidden reservoir of rosewater mixed with powdered marble. The mixture kept root systems cool during brutal summers, but also served a darker purpose. It amplified underground vibrations. Eunuchs would lay ear to ground to detect digging sounds from potential tunnel attacks. The method was so effective, the British later adapted it for colonial bunkers. Historians still argue whether this counts as ancient acoustics or just paranoid landscaping. A rustle in the bushes reveals a family of Suneri Bunda, the golden langurs trained to harvest toxic night-blooming flowers. Their fur had been dusted with turmeric as protection against toxins, and also because it made them look delightfully absurd scampering through moonlit gardens like tiny, cursed torches. One particularly clever monkey was said to have stolen Akbar's crown during an outdoor banquet, then bartered it back for mangoes. As you turn to leave, your sleeve catches on a thorn, not a plant, but a tiny silver sermon needle embedded in the bark. These were left by royal ophthalmologists who believed moon garden vapors could cure cataracts, provided you first endured getting your eyelids pricked with toxin-coated needles. The treatment worked surprisingly well, assuming you survived the infection risk. The crunch of gravel shifts to something softer, a pathway paved entirely with dried mango pits. You've entered the orchard of broken treaties, where every tree tells a tale of botanical bribery gone wrong. That gnarled specimen to your left? The infamous Ambassadori Gadar, traitor's mango, under which Aurangzeb signed peace with the Marathas, after gifting them 50 saplings secretly grafted with sterile rootstock. The resulting fruit war lasted longer than the actual conflict. Ahead, the air thickens with the caramelized scent of Chausa mangoes ripening in the dark, a variety so prized, nobles would hire blindfolded guards to protect individual trees. The 1657 theft of a single Chausa from Shah Jahan's private orchard sparked an investigation that uncovered A. a eunuch smuggling ring, B. 3 fake horticulturalists, and C. why the imperial wine cellar suddenly tasted suspiciously tropical. Historians still argue whether the thieves ever revealed their aging process for mango brandy. Your shoulder brushes against a peculiar hybrid, a mango branch grafted onto a pomegranate trunk. This was the doing of Princess Jahanara's rebellious gardening phase, when she attempted to create fruit that would explode into juice-filled segments when dropped. The only surviving specimen became a court attraction until someone noticed the fruits contained exactly 108 seeds, a sacred Hindu number that got the head gardener briefly accused of heresy. That sticky residue on the sundial? The remains of the great mango molasses disaster of 1691, when a heatwave fermented an entire season's harvest into alcoholic syrup. For 3 glorious days, the entire court stumbled around in a sweet, drunken haze, until Aurangzeb banned mangoes entirely. He lasted 6 hours before his personal physician rediscovered their medicinal properties. A faint clinking draws you to a buried matka pot, the Mughal equivalent of a botanical time capsule. Inside, generations of gardeners sealed notes about ideal pollination techniques, written on mango leaf paper and preserved in honey. The most recent one simply reads, "Stop stealing my clippings, Hassan." Rahim, 1724. Some traditions never die. A sharp cry pierces the humid air, not a bird, but the descendant of Emperor Akbar's legendary messenger falcons. You've stumbled into the Baz Khana, the sandstone muse where winged spies were trained to carry coded threats tucked into their jesses. That peculiar notch in the eastern wall? Carved by a frustrated hawk who kept mistaking the Grand Vizier's jewel turban for prey. The subsequent no live falcons during cabinet meetings rule lasted exactly 1 day, until someone realized pigeons were far worse informants. The ground here is littered with iridescent feathers, and are those tiny leather boots? Welcome to the Mughal's most bizarre arms race, the Great Pigeon Wars of 1612. After discovering Safavid spies were intercepting their falcons, the imperial aviaries bred a squadron of attack pigeons armored with razor-thin whack-whack metal plates. The birds failed spectacularly, mostly because they kept stopping to mate with the enemy's pigeons mid-air. Historians still argue whether this counts as early aerial warfare or just very elaborate ornithological dating. A rustling comes from the Chicago hunting blind, its lattice walls still scarred with beak marks. Here, handlers drugged royal falcons with opium-laced quail meat to make them suggestible before diplomatic missions, a trick that backfired when the birds developed addiction symptoms and started dive-bombing the opium fields instead of enemy camps. The head falconer solution? Switch to saffron-based tranquilizers, which turned the birds' feathers sunset orange and made them ridiculously easy targets. Your foot kicks a clay whistle, the infamous bulbul caller used to summon songbirds for nighttime surveillance. Eunuchs would hide these in garden niches, blowing coded melodies to alert agents. That is, until the real bulbul started mimicking the tones, creating an avian misinformation campaign that once triggered an unnecessary palace lockdown because a lovesick nightingale sounded like their attack signal. As you leave, a shadow swoops low, one of Jahangir's clockwork hawks, its mechanical wings still twitching centuries later. The emperor commissioned these automata to impress visitors, though they mostly just frightened the peacocks into molting prematurely. The last functioning model was reproposed as a chandelier in 1897, where it allegedly pecked a British officer ball during a dinner party. A whisper of parchment against leaves guides you to the sundial garden, where the real sundial isn't the stone pillar in the center, but the shadow patterns cast by the deceptively ordinary-looking neem tree. Its branches were pruned over decades to function as a celestial calendar, with each leaf cluster marking a different astrological event. The head gardener's secret? He bribed the court astronomer with bang-laced honey to get the angles exactly right. Beneath your feet, the gravel forms peculiar ridges. Not erosion, but the buried remains of the Kitabi Bostani, the garden book rebellion. When Aurangzeb banned non-religious texts, scholars transcribed entire botany manuals onto mulberry paper and buried them beneath medicinal herbs. The most famous, The Properties of Nightshades, was only rediscovered in 1987, its pages perfectly preserved between layers of mint and wormwood. Historians still argue whether the annotations about sleep-inducing roses were legitimate science or assassination recipes. Your fingers brush against a suspiciously warm patch of moss, the last remnant of the Gulistani Surat, the Garden of Images. Here, exiled artists painted forbidden portraits using plant-based dyes that only became visible when sprayed with rosewater. The technique was lost when the head painter accidentally used a reactive pigment for a depiction of Jahangir's wine cellar, which then appeared on every fountain's surface during the next monsoon. Ahead, a crumbling niche holds that librarian's rose, a hybrid cultivar bred to bloom when its roots touched buried books, its petals unfolding like pages. The head gardener used it to secretly mark where texts were interred, until a visiting French botanist dug up half the garden trying to steal the magic flower and triggered an international incident. As you turn to leave, your shadow falls across a peculiar circular depression, the original testing ground for Shah Jahan's doomed perpetual ink project. He commissioned alchemists to create a dye from crushed lapis lazuli and pomegranate rinds that would withstand monsoon rains. Instead, they invented the first documented case of color-changing paint, which unfortunately shifted to an insulting shade of green whenever exposed to sunlight. A sudden shift in the air, now thick with the narcotic sweetness of Kiora blossoms, guides you toward the perfumer's pavilion. That octagonal marble platform ahead isn't a stage, it's the world's first olfactory lie detector. Nobles were made to stand there while perfumers analyzed how their sweat reacted to different essential oils. Fun fact, guilty parties apparently smelled like burnt almonds when exposed to mogra atta. Science has yet to explain why. Your sleeve catches on a copper distillation coil dangling from a long-dead itemaker's workstation. This particular apparatus was nicknamed Jahangir's Truth Serum, a steam-powered contraption that could extract fragrance from 100 roses in minutes, or, with slight modifications, brew a knockout potion strong enough to tranquilize elephants. The recipe was lost when the royal perfumer defected to Persia, taking with him the secret to eternal youth attar, which turned out to be just regular rose oil with excessive flattery. Beneath your feet, the tiles form a mosaic of the zodiac, not for decoration, but as a cheat sheet for astrological perfumery. Each sign corresponded to a specific blend. Libras got jasmine for diplomacy, while Leos were doused in sandalwood to curb their egos. The system worked beautifully until someone realized the court astrologer had been reassigning birth charts to sell more expensive fragrances. Historians still argue whether this constitutes the first documented case of marketing fraud. That cracked ceramic jar in the corner? The infamous Dui Khushbu, scent prayer, experiment, an attempt to capture the exact aroma of the first monsoon rain on Delhi's soil. After 300 failed attempts, the head perfumer declared success, only for the emperor to point out it just smelled like wet dirt. The furious perfumer later exacted revenge by creating a cologne that made Jahangir sneeze uncontrollably during important meetings. As you exit, a single drop of condensation falls from a broken pipe, still releasing faint whiffs of henna blossom after centuries. This was part of the weather system that pumped different fragrances into the palace based on the time of day. Dawn brought citrus notes to energize courtiers, while midnight emitted sedative chamomile, until a disgruntled servant swapped the nighttime blend with something that made the entire harem break into spontaneous dance. A sudden chill cuts through the floral warmth as you enter the ice pavilion, where the marble floor still hums with the ghost of Himalayan winters. Those strange grooves in the walls? They held barfikos, the special ice hauled from Kashmir by barefoot runners who could outpace melting temperatures. The record holder was a man who delivered a 300-pound block in August, and promptly collapsed into a snoring heap in the imperial pantry for 2 days. Your fingertips graze the snow lattice, a perforated screen designed to circulate glacial air without direct contact. On summer nights, nobles would lounge here nibbling ice shavings flavored with pomegranate syrup, while their less fortunate guests sweltered outside. The ultimate flex? Shah Jahan once served sherbet in goblets carved from single ice crystals, which dissolved before the toast could be finished. Historians still argue whether this was performance art or just really poor drinkware choices. That suspiciously dark stain in the corner marks the site of the Great Ice Heist of 1660, when a Dutch merchant smuggled out Mughal refrigeration techniques in his water flask. His notes inspired Europe's first ice houses, though he failed to mention the critical detail of using salt straw insulation, leading to some very confused and damp aristocrats in Amsterdam. Ahead, the remnants of a silver sled gleam dully, part of the infamous rose ice delivery system. Frozen rose petals were packed between glacier chunks to create perfumed ice that perfumed the air as it melted. The system worked beautifully until someone realized the sled's runners were made of pure silver, and suddenly every delivery arrived suspiciously lighter. As you turn to leave, your foot kicks a half-buried yakchal jar, the personal ice canteen of Empress Mumtaz's favorite greyhound. The dog reportedly refused to drink unless his water was chilled with moon-touched ice, which turned out to just be regular ice with edible silver leaf stirred in. The vet bills alone could have funded a small war. The air suddenly vibrates with a deep, golden hum. You found the gilded apiary, where Mughal beekeepers bred insects as meticulously as racehorses. Those hexagonal niches in the wall aren't decorative. They're the original luxury condos for Api Serrana indica, the imperial strain that produced honey so potent, a single spoonful could allegedly cure heartbreak, or at least make you forget your ex's name for a few hours. Your shadow falls across a sun-bleached ledger still tacked to a cedar post, the infamous honey scrolls that tracked each hive's production down to the dram. The margins tell the real story, frantic notes about hive number 7 sneezing, a bad pollen season, and Queen eloped with wild drone, a apian scandal that got 3 beekeepers demoted to rose pruning duty. Historians still argue whether these were serious scientific records or the world's first bee-themed soap opera. That sticky residue on your sleeve? The last traces of Shari Shahad, the king of honeys reserved for royal sore throats. Its unique terroir came from bees that foraged exclusively on jasmine and night-blooming cereus, until European traders introduced lavender, causing a flavor mutiny that tanked the entire crop. The head beekeeper's solution? A palace-wide ban on the color purple to discourage floral rebellion. Ahead, a shattered glass panel reveals the remains of the observation hive, a revolutionary and slightly unhinged invention that let Jahangir watch honey production from his breakfast balcony. The project was abandoned when the emperor developed a phobia of bee beards after witnessing an especially enthusiastic swarm. As you leave, a single surviving bee drones past your ear, likely descended from the notorious lazy strain that preferred napping in lotus flowers over pollination. Their honey had to be labeled leisure grade and was mainly sold to poets suffering writer's block. The hive mysteriously vanished after producing a batch that made everyone who ate it speak in perfect rhyming couplets for a week. A rustling in the hedge reveals not leaves, but layers of carefully clipped ashoka branches forming the profile of a snarling tiger. Welcome to the zodiac topiary garden, where Mughal astrologers and landscapers waged silent warfare with pruning shears. That suspiciously lopsided Virgo over there? Not bad gardening, but an act of rebellion after the court astrologer declared the constellation inauspicious for agriculture. The real miracle is how they kept Scorpio looking threatening while using nothing but Mundi bushes. Your elbow brushes against a topiary globe that still spins on its rusted axis, the infamous monsoon predictor. Each continent was shaped from a different plant, Cosca's grass for Africa, which made the southwest corner smell like a Bombay spa during rains, sandalwood for Arabia, which the palace cats kept urinating on, and holy basil for India, which somehow always stayed perfectly trimmed, leading to rumors of divine intervention. Ahead, the Leo topiary's manner shivers in the breeze, not from wind, but because it's secretly stuffed with centuries-old love letters. This was the preferred drop point for illicit correspondence after Prince Salim, later Jahangir, discovered the court censors never inspected artistic shrubbery. The system worked until a particularly amorous noble accidentally addressed his note to the actual lion in the menagerie, resulting in the most awkward palace breakfast in history. That suspiciously green patch beneath Capricorn? The last remnant of that astrology protest garden, where junior horticulturists secretly grew medicinal herbs in constellation shapes to prove plants mattered more than stars. Their movement collapsed when someone pointed out they'd used astrological symbols to arrange their herb beds. Historians still argue whether this was irony or performance art. As you leave, a single chamelli blossom falls from the overgrown Libra scales, still perfumed after all these years. The head gardener used to weigh these daily as cent currency, exchanging them for supplies. The system was abolished when someone realized the floral treasurer had been stuffing the scales with wet clay to inflate the numbers. The crunch of gravel gives way to an unsettling softness. You've stepped onto the funeral lawn, where the nobility cultivated their own memorial topiaries while still alive. That topiary elephant missing one ear. It was groomed daily by General barked until the morning his servants found him slumped against its side, pruning shears still in hand. The gardeners kept trimming it lopsided in tribute, until Aurangzeb ordered it raised for UN Islamic sentimentality. Ahead, a yew tree twists into the Urdu word for forgotten, the work of a disgraced vizier who spent his final years shaping his own epitaph in leaves. The bitter irony? The tree outlived his family line by 2 centuries. Touch the trunk and your fingers come away sticky with medicinal resin, the same substance used to preserve the vizier's infamous death portrait, which allegedly blinked during thunderstorms. Your shadow falls across a sunken plot where the earth forms a perfect rectangle, the last vestige of Begum Sahiba's breathing tomb. The eccentric princess commissioned a hollow garden bed where she'd nap to practice eternity, its sides lined with mint to mask the grave smell. Her heirs turned it into a cocktail pit after she died, which historians argue she would have either loved or haunted them for. That faint chime isn't the wind, but the soul bell still dangling from what remains of court poet Ghani's cypress. He trained ivy to grow in ghazal verses, with silver bells marking each rhyme. The plants kept growing after his execution, eventually forming an entire stanza the emperor had burned for being better than the royal couplet. As you leave, your foot sinks into a patch of unusually springy moss, the famous laughing grave of eunuch musician Tansen II. His will demanded he be buried under special fungi that puff up when stepped on, creating the illusion of laughter. The current caretaker still refreshes the spores every monsoon, for reasons known only to the nightingales. A rustle of papery leaves leads you to the rebel rosarium, where the petals underfoot aren't just fallen, they're fugitives. This is where the gardening staff secretly bred striped carnations whose patterns formed protest slogans when pressed onto cloth. That stunted bush by the broken trellis? The infamous Gulliazadi, freedom rose, whose thorns were deliberately arranged to prick the fingers of tax collectors. Your sleeve catches on a surviving newspaper vine, Passiflora megalica, trained to grow with leaves exactly the size and thickness of forbidden political pamphlets. Dissidents would write messages in walnut ink, then let the leaves swallow them whole as they grew. The system worked until a monsoon made every vine in the palace publish simultaneously, resulting in the world's first botanical data leak. Beneath that suspiciously vibrant patch of clover lies the seed vault, a terracotta pot where the head gardener hid heirloom bulbs during purges. The original labels are still visible in charcoal. Jahangir's tulip complains when watered before noon, and saffron crocus, bribes accepted. Historians still argue whether these were real planting notes or someone's elaborate gardening-themed fan fiction. That cracked sundial isn't broken, it's set to protest time, 2 hours ahead of the palace clock so rebellious gardeners could knock off early. The ruse lasted 3 glorious decades until a visiting astronomer wondered why the roses opened at such odd hours. As you leave, your heel crushes a dried seed pod that releases a puff of scarlet dust, the last trace of the Cirque Revolution, when gardeners dyed an entire season's marigolds the color of workers' flags. The emperor retaliated by having the flowers woven into carpets he walked on daily, until the dye transferred to his slippers, making it look like he'd stomped through blood. The path narrows to a single moonlit ribbon as you reach the forbidden nursery, where the air hums with the drowsy buzz of night beetles and is that the snick of shears. You freeze as a shadow detaches itself from the neem grove. No, just an ornamental peacock. But the freshly turned earth near the old ice pit? That's new. Your toes curl in the still warm soil as you spot the first stolen treasure, a terracotta pot wrapped in malmal cloth, its contents emitting the unmistakable spicy-sweet scent of Mumtazee roses, a cultivar thought extinct since the East India Company looted its last specimen in 1803. The thief's gloves lie discarded nearby, fingers stained yellow from haldi root, the traditional anti-burglar dye Mughal gardeners used to tag plant thieves. A rustle in the cuss grass reveals their haul, bundles of Shah Jahani jasmine cuttings, a corked vial of glacier lily pollen, and that explains the military-grade pruning shears. Tucked between 2 stones glints the infamous biryani spoon, the ceremonial digging tool used by generations of head gardeners to transplant saplings. Its last official sighting was in 1947, when a British officer's wife accidentally packed it with her picnic silverware. The distant crunch of gravel sends you scrambling behind a topiary. Flashlight beams sweep the path, modern security guards or descendants of the original Bagban protectors. The beams pause at a freshly emptied plot where the Mughal's last surviving Itraful tree once grew, its fruit a cure for insomnia. The earth there is disturbingly loose. As you retreat, your hand closes around something cold in the grass, a single silver Abossi coin from Jahangir's reign, minted with a rose instead of his profile. The original severance package for fired gardeners. You slip it into your pocket as the first raindrops begin to fall, each one releasing centuries of trapped fragrance from the stolen blooms. The rain settles into a gentle rhythm now, washing the last traces of yellow dye from your fingertips. Somewhere beyond these walls, the stolen plants begin their new journey. Wrapped in newspaper, tucked into suitcase linings, or strapped to motorcycle handlebars by people who understand that beauty makes the best contraband. The gardens sigh around you, equal parts relieved and resigned. These roots have survived worse thieves, droughts, wars, entire empires that thought they could own the very concept of bloom and thorn. That faint shimmer on the canal? Just fish rising to nibble midnight petals, continuing a banquet that began when the first Mughal emperor declared this patch of earth paradise. You lean against a kynar tree whose bark still bears the scars of a princess's nail marks from when she climbed it to escape an arranged marriage. The wood remembers. The roses remember. Even the peacocks, those feathered gossips, still strut with the arrogance of birds who once dined on crushed pearls in marbled courtyards. As your eyelids grow heavy, The last awake things in the garden are the Rakhi Rani blossoms unfurling their narcotic perfume, and perhaps, if you believe in such things, the lightless flutter of Shah Jahan's mechanical songbird, still trying to sing its way through a rusted throat. The rain softens to a whisper. The peacocks fall still. And the gardens, at last, dream. The scent of wet earth deepens as you follow a trail of discarded petals to the moonlight market, an illicit bazaar that bloomed only when the royal gardeners pretended to sleep. Those broken clay cups half buried in the dirt? Not litter, but the remains of the tea of forbidden knowledge, brewed from stolen porridge-ot flowers that supposedly granted visions of future harvests. The effect was actually just mild hallucinations from improperly fermented pollen, but try telling that to the nobleman who bet entire orchards on prophetic tea leaves. Your foot knocks against a rusted scale, the infamous tulip balance used to weigh bulbs against gemstones during Holland's craze. The Mughals thought the Europeans mad until they realized a single Lali Badakshi bulb could buy a cavalry horse. The trade ended abruptly when a Dutch merchant tried to pay with counterfeit tulips painted on goat parchment, sparking the first recorded case of botanical fraud extradition. Ahead, the remnants of a silk canopy flap like a ghostly flag, all that's left of the perfume souk, where courtesans sold memory elixirs in blown glass bottles. Each scent allegedly contained a specific recollection: monsoon mornings, a lover's stolen kiss, the precise shade of amber in Jahangir's wine cup. The most expensive vial? Last breath of a dying garden, just rosewater with a pinch of graveyard soil, but nobles swore it carried the sigh of uprooted champa trees. That glint in the grass isn't dew, it's a shattered Surma bottle from the coal cartel, who smuggled ground lapis lazuli in hollowed-out eggplants. Their operation collapsed when a consignment hatched actual eggplant seedlings, revealing the hiding places to palace inspectors. Historians still argue whether this was an agricultural accident or divine punishment for price gouging. As you turn to leave, your palm brushes against something warm, a surviving whisper melon, its rind carved with marketplace gossip from 1643. Hold it to your ear and you can almost hear the haggling, 3 silver coins for that mango graft. Begum Sahiba herself wouldn't pay such robbery. The voices fade as dawn stains the eastern sky, leaving only the taste of stolen guava on the wind. The first light of dawn stains the horizon as you stumble upon the gardener's graveyard, where the real tombstones aren't stone at all, but living markers of Ficus religiosa trees, each planted atop a buried horticulturist's tools. That gnarled specimen leaning at a drunken angle? That's old Abbas, who spent 40 years perfecting the imperial rose grafts and requested his pruning shears be buried upright so I can tend paradise's thorns. Touch the bark and your fingers come away sticky with resin that still smells faintly of his signature atta blend, rose oil cut with lime to keep the senses sharp. Ahead, a circle of dwarf champa trees shivers in the breeze, the final resting place of the legendary twins of Agra, 2 sister gardeners who could predict monsoon dates by tasting soil. Their grave sprouts a single hybrid flower, half champa, half juhi, a variety they bred in secret to bloom only on the anniversary of their death. The current head gardener still replaces it every year, though no one remembers when the tradition started. Historians still argue whether the sisters actually shared a single soul or just really coordinated planting schedules. Your foot sinks into a suspiciously soft patch of doob grass, the unmarked plot of the nameless Moor Ali, the rebel botanist who introduced hallucinogenic mushrooms to the imperial kitchens disguised as morel varieties. When discovered, he was sentenced to life as a taste tester, until he escaped by faking an allergic reaction to saffron, a feat considered impossible by Mughal physicians. The grass here grows unnaturally blue, likely from the vials of indigo dye he smuggled in his water flask. That faint chime isn't the wind, it's the bell of broken promises, dangling from the grave of head gardener Murad, who famously swore he'd make the emperor's marigolds bloom in snow. He failed, of course, but the subsequent experiments gave Delhi its first winter greenhouse. The bell rings whenever the temperature drops below 10 degrees Celsius, a final joke from a man who loved confounding expectations. As you leave, dawn's light catches something metallic in the grass, Murad's rusted lucky trowel, its handle notched with 37 tiny cuts, one for every time he almost got executed for botanical insolence. The last notch remains half-finished. The rising sun reveals what night hid, a network of spiderweb cracks in the garden walls, each filled with something growing. This is the secret seed bank, where generations of Marleys pressed their most precious specimens into mortar gaps like botanical time capsules. That emerald green vine spilling from a fissure? Piper Mughalicus, a pepper variety bred to grow in perfect spirals for easy harvesting, until someone discovered its leaves caused uncontrollable honesty when chewed. The subsequent truth herb trials saw 3 viziers resign before the plant was pruned from official records. Your thumbnail scrapes away lichen to reveal names scratched beneath. Not graffiti, but the wall of the disappeared, where exiled gardeners recorded their final acts of rebellion. Here's Farid in shaky letters beside a pressed Neelakurinji bloom that flowers only once every 12 years. Below it, Nazreen carved deep into the stone, her name cradling a single opium poppy seed that somehow still glistens with viability after 2 centuries. Historians still argue whether these were farewells or resurrection instructions. Ahead, a collapsed archway spills forth a waterfall of Giloy vines, nature's final joke on the imperial physician who stored his immortality elixir recipes here. The plants now grow with unprecedented medicinal potency, having absorbed decades of spilled tonics. The current groundskeeper harvests them in secret, though he swears the vines now twist themselves into the exact shape of the physician's signature whenever pruned. That glint in the debris isn't mica, it's a surviving fragment of the crystal dew collector, a contraption designed to harvest morning vapor from rare blossoms. The inventor claimed each drop contained the essence of its parent flower, until Jahangir caught him topping up the vial from a canal. The device was smashed, but not before producing one legendary batch of dew of 1,000 roses that made anyone who drank it weep at the beauty of sunrise for a month. As you turn to leave, your shadow falls across the last intact inscription, "What we bury grows." The mortar around it pulses with tiny green shoots, bakel seeds planted yesterday or 100 years ago, no one can tell. They'll bloom tonight, perfuming the dark with the same scent the mason smelled when they sealed this wall. The sun climbs higher, revealing the garden's best-kept secret. It was never one garden at all, but 12, each built atop the ruins of its predecessor like layers of a perfumed onion. Those oddly spaced cypress trees? They're the last survivors of Baber's original vineyard, stubbornly pushing through 3 centuries of redesigns. The current head groundskeeper calls them the old grumblers because their roots allegedly make the earth tremble during British-era plays in the pavilion. Your shoe dislodges a shard of cobalt tile, not broken, but deliberately shaped like a Carter dagger. This is part of the bloodline puzzle, a hidden pathway of weapon-shaped ceramics leading to Humayun's lost rose graft nursery. Follow the trail correctly, and you'll find the mother plant of every Mughal red rose. Get it wrong, and you'll wind up at the infamous sword in the soil monument, where disgraced nobles were forced to plant their own weapons until the blades rusted into fertilizer. Ahead, a circular depression in the grass marks the original site of Akbar's floating garden, a waterborne labyrinth of lotus pads that could support 3 dancing elephants. The engineering secret? Hollow ceramic floats disguised as water lilies, until the elephants discovered they made excellent chew toys. The subsequent Great Sinking became a court euphemism for any well-intentioned disaster. That suspiciously symmetrical ant hill is actually the Ant Fort, a scaled replica of Lahore Fort built by entomologist Prince Dara Shikoh to study insect societies. The project was abandoned when the ant started mimicking Mughal court rituals, including executing undesirables by pushing them off pebble balconies. Historians still argue whether this was observational bias or the first documented case of cross-species performance art. As noon approaches, the light hits a buried mirror shard just right, revealing the sun gate, a long-forgotten alignment where summer solstice rays would ignite a ceremonial torch in the harem baths. The mechanism last worked in 1707, accidentally setting Aurangzeb's beard on fire during an austerity lecture. The resulting balding of the emperor decree banned all mirrors from the gardens, which explains why the peacocks have been so smug ever since. The heat of midday softens the garden's edges now, blending history into haze. Somewhere beyond these walls, are modern Marley's Water's descendants of these same flowers, unaware their roots once touched royal hands. The peacocks retreat to cool marble niches, their tail feathers whispering secrets to the same breezes that once carried imperial decrees. You settle beneath the oldest kainar, its leaves imprinting shadow patterns on your skin like forgotten calligraphy. The earth here remembers everything, the weight of ceremonial shovels, the press of lovers' palms, the exact spot where a homesick princess buried a sapling from her mother's cashmere garden. Its branches now stretch over 3 administrative districts. As your eyelids grow heavy, the garden performs its final magic. The air itself seems to thicken with phantom scents, a burst of lime from a long-dead hedge, the vanilla sweetness of Jahangir's smoking pipe, the unmistakable almond note of datura blossoms that once fueled palace dreams. The last thing you hear isn't birdsong, but the creak of a centuries-old well pulley, still turning in the wind, still drawing up water that remembers when it was ice on Himalayan peaks. Some say if you listen closely at dusk, you can hear the masons laughing as they mix mortar with jasmine oil. The shadows pool like spilled ink. The ants retreat to their miniature Diwan icons. And the gardens, at last, exhale. The sun climbs higher, revealing the true purpose of the garden's jagged pathways. They are not walkways, but a colossal sundial designed to cast shadows in the shape of Persian love poetry at noon. That dark streak slicing across your feet? The opening line of a ghazal comparing a lover's absence to winter in a rose garden. Too bad the architect forgot Delhi's monsoons. By August, the entire love poem dissolves into a Rorschach blot of mud. Your fingers trace the grooves of a tilted marble slab. The infamous rebel gnomon, installed by a disgraced astronomer who tweaked the angles so the shadow would point to hidden brandy caches during prayer time. His scheme worked flawlessly until the emperor noticed his courtiers kept coincidentally praying near the same rosebush 5 times a day. Ahead, a circle of scorched grass marks where the fire sundial once stood, its bronze face designed to ignite incense at precise hours. The mechanism worked too well. During the 1646 summer solstice, it set an ambassador's ceremonial sash on fire, leading to the first recorded case of diplomatic arson. Historians still argue whether it was an accident or commentary on trade negotiations. That glint in the gravel isn't mica, it's a surviving time coin, stamped with Shah Jahan's profile on one side and a blooming lotus on the other. Gardeners would flip them to decide pruning schedules, king for tradition, flower for experimentation. The system collapsed when someone realized the coins were weighted to always land flower side up. As you leave, your shadow stretches into the elongated form of a porridgeot flower, an intentional effect caused by angled mirrors in the hedgerow. The Mughals called this the hour of floral souls, when the garden's true guardians revealed themselves. Or maybe the architects just really like messing with people. A flicker of sapphire wings leads you to the pavilion of pollinators, where the Mughals didn't just keep bees, but trained butterflies as living paintbrushes. Those odd stains on the marble? Not water damage, but the remnants of the wingstroke murals, created by releasing dye-dipped swallowtails onto wet plaster. The technique was abandoned when a VIP tour arrived to find the walls decorated with what looked like drunken inkblots. Your sleeve disturbs a cloud of orange tiger blues, descendants of the infamous spice butterflies bred to seek out saffron threads. They worked beautifully until migrating flocks learned to follow them straight to the imperial pantry. The head chef's solution? Pepper-spiked nectar that made the butterflies sneeze mid-flight, creating the world's first airborne seasoning system. Ahead, a collapsed silk pavilion reveals the cocoon vault, where chrysalises were stored like jewels in velvet-lined drawers. Each bore tiny identification tags, *Nur 72, for Emperor's birthday, gold dust wings *or *Zeb 55, morning motif, flies counterclockwise. The system collapsed when a monsoon turned the vault into a butterfly rave. That sticky residue on your fingers? The last traces of the nectar of oblivion, a sedative-laced flower syrup used to calm aggressive hummingbirds. The recipe was lost when the royal apothecary accidentally drank his own supply and spent a week trying to pollinate the harem's hair ornaments. As you leave, a single metallic Papilio megalica lands on your shoulder, its wings still faintly patterned like miniature Mughal miniatures. Touch them, and your fingertips come away shimmering with the same powdered lapis lazuli that once illuminated imperial manuscripts. The Whispering Grotto. The path descends into an artificial cave where the walls themselves seem to breathe. This is the sound garden, where every drip and echo was engineered for maximum drama. That puddle reflecting your face upside down? Part of the black water mirror, designed to amplify voices into ghostly whispers. Eunuchs would hide here to mock their superiors' speeches in real time until someone noticed the ghosts had suspiciously specific complaints about salary delays. Your palm presses against a throat stone, a porous volcanic rock that absorbs sound by day and releases it at night. The grotto's original DJ, a tone-deaf prince, used to record hours of terrible poetry into these walls. They still moan his couplets whenever the humidity rises, much to the current groundskeeper's despair. Ahead, a dry fountain's scalloped edge forms a perfect sound lens. Stand at the focal point, and you can hear gardeners chatting 3 terraces away. The system worked too well. It once picked up a concubine's offhand joke about Jahangir's hunting skills, resulting in the first recorded case of accidental microphone consequences. That suspiciously smooth depression in the wall? That sighing niche, where homesick workers would whisper messages to their villages. The acoustics carried their voices straight to the Yamana's banks, until a flood changed the river's course, leaving thousands of unheard confessions trapped in stone. Historians still argue whether to excavate them or let them rest. As you exit, your footsteps trigger a final acoustic trick, the laughing stairs, where each step plays a different note from a forgotten court melody. The last intact riser hums a Mishra raga that was banned for causing uncontrollable dancing. The stones remember what the empire tried to forget. A flash of iridescence reveals the garden's most absurd secret, a living throne woven from peacock feathers still attached to very annoyed birds. This was Jahangir's idea of sustainable furniture, 28 specially trained blue peacocks arranged in a semicircle, their tail feathers forming a backrest that changed patterns as they preened. The throne worked surprisingly well until mating season, when the entire assembly would abruptly abandon court proceedings to chase hens. Your foot nudges a tarnished silver bell that Summoner of Vanity used to call the birds to their stations. The head trainer eventually replaced it with a recorded peahen's call, which worked until real peahens started showing up for fake dates. The resulting love triangle inspired one of the empire's weirdest diplomatic incidents. Ahead, a depression in the grass marks where the feather bank once stood, a shed where molted plumage was sorted by color grade and length. The imperial accountant kept meticulous records. *3 142 emerald grade feathers owed by Raja Singh for that botched hunting party apology. The system collapsed when someone realized the peacocks were deliberately plucking themselves to get extra treats. That blue-green shimmer in the dirt? Not a lost jewel, but peacock dung mixed with powdered malachite, the Mughal answer to glitter. Servants would sprinkle it on pathways for night banquets, unaware it made the entire garden mildly hallucinogenic when stepped on. Historians still argue whether this explains some particularly bizarre court decrees. As you leave, a surviving throne peacock struts across your path, its tail still bearing the faint indentation where Jahangir's imperial backside once rested. It eyes you with the weary disdain of a creature that remembers when it was technically a government official. The Mango Mafia. A sweet, fermented scent leads you to the garden's most dangerous corner, the Aam Chaya Bazaar, Mango Black Market, where the fruit wasn't just stolen, but held for ransom. That suspiciously smooth patch of earth? The drop point for the infamous 1673 Himsagar heist, where a rogue gardener swapped the emperor's favorite mangoes with wax replicas for 3 weeks before anyone noticed. His demand? Better working conditions and a lifetime supply of chowsa seeds. He got the seeds, planted in his prison cell. Your fingers brush against a tree carved with tiny notches, that ledger of greed, recording every mango bribe to officials. The code was simple, horizontal cuts for judges, vertical for tax collectors, and diagonal for the notoriously corrupt spice inspectors. The system worked until someone added wavy lines for lazy princes and nearly started a civil war. Ahead, a collapsed bamboo cage once held the Mango Police, a squad of specially trained macaques who could sniff out stolen fruit. They were fired after developing a taste for Langra varieties and raiding shipments themselves. The current groundskeeper swears their descendants still run a midnight smuggling ring. That sticky residue on the sundial? The remains of the Mango Court, where nobles would hold blind taste tests to settle disputes. The verdicts were legally binding, until a vizier proved his innocence by identifying a Totapuri blindfolded, only for the emperor to realize no one had actually accused him of anything. As you leave, your foot crushes a dried seed husk that releases one final puff of scent, the ghost of a Fazli mango so perfect, it inspired a 3-day poetry marathon. The verses are lost, but the trees remember. The emerald ants. The sunlight hits a patch of dirt just right, revealing a flicker of green, not grass, but thousands of emerald ants scurrying along an invisible highway. These jewel-toned insects were the Mughal's living pest control, trained to farm aphids for sugary honeydew while ignoring the roses. Their secret? A daily paycheck of honey laced with pistachio essence, which turned their abdomens the exact shade of young jade leaves. Your shadow sends them scattering into cracks, the same cracks that once held their ant mint, where enterprising eunuchs pressed and derived formic acid into coins for medicinal trade. The operation was shut down when the imperial treasurer realized half his gold was being swapped for biocurrency during audits. Ahead, a crumbling Chatri pavilion houses the ant library, clay tablets recording each colony's lineage and productivity. The most prized tablet? Colony number 7, 62% aphid cull rate, aggressive but dances to flute music. Historians still argue whether the dancing was real or wishful thinking. That glint in the anthill? A surviving ant mirror, tiny polished silver discs used to redirect sunlight into nests and boost winter productivity. The project backfired when the ants started hoarding the mirrors as decoration, building disco ball nests that confused predatory lizards into thinking they'd stumbled into a very small nightclub. As you leave, a single ant drags a petal twice its size across your boot, a Megalica minor, the last descendant of a strain bred to weave rose petals into waterproof nesting material. Its ancestors lined the emperor's hunting tents. Now it patches a hole in a cricket's burrow. The drunkard's alley. The air grows thick with the scent of overripe burr fruit as you enter the garden's most scandalous pathway, a winding route lined with medicinal brandy-infused shrubs. Those suspiciously smooth stones underfoot? Worn down by generations of nobles taking the air while secretly following a trail of fermented mahua flowers. The original designer claimed the path treated melancholic humors, though his ledger listed payments in casks, not coins. Your sleeve catches on a Cosca's grass screen, the infamous vomitorium, where overindulgers could discreetly lose their dignity. The clever part? The runoff channeled into a special compost pit that grew the most hallucinogenic mushrooms in Delhi. The royal physician called them tonics, the poets called them musemakers, and the emperor called them "Why is my carpet breathing?" Ahead, a circular depression marks where the swirling pool once stood, a basin filled with lime juice and sugar where tipsy courtiers could test their balance by walking the rim. The current groundskeeper still finds hairpins and false mustaches in the dirt, relics of midnight dares gone wrong. That sticky residue on the bench? The remains of the hangover ivy, a specially bred Gilloy strain that grew antidote compounds in its leaves. Servants would chew it into poultices for aching noble heads, until someone noticed the ivy itself grew crooked after absorbing too much alcohol vapor. As you leave, a single mahua blossom plops onto your shoulder, its nectar still faintly flammable, just like the breakfast brandy that once fueled imperial court sessions. Some traditions never die. The sundial's revenge. The garden's shadows have shifted, and not just from the time of day. Those jagged lines cutting across the lawn? The work of the vengeance sundial, a secret project by head gardener Abbas to embarrass his replacement. He tweaked the no man's angle so that at high noon, the shadow spells lazy across the new guy's prized marigolds. The prank worked for 40 years before monsoons eroded the effect. Your fingers trace grooves in a sundial's base, not decorative, but the complaint ledger, where gardeners recorded grievances via shadow codes. A long mark meant stolen tools, a zigzag signaled beetle infestations, and 3 dots in a row marked the arrival of that insufferable French botanist again. The system collapsed when someone used a magnifying glass to burn in pay US. Ahead, a tilted hourglass filled with sand from the Thar desert still measures gardener's time, 2 hours slower than palace clocks to account for heat exhaustion. The current groundskeeper swears it speeds up whenever bureaucrats visit. That glint in the grass? A sun coin, specially minted with a hole to hang from sundials as counterweights. The holes also let spies peek through them to read encrypted shadow messages, until Aurangzeb had them melted down for being too clever by half. As you leave, your shadow stretches into the elongated digits of a decimal time experiment, the Mughal's failed attempt to divide daylight into 100 equal parts. The gardeners sabotaged it by moving the markers daily, proving even emperors can't control the sun. The nightmare greenhouse. A shiver runs down your spine as you approach the glass pavilion, or what's left of it. Jagged shards protrude from the earth like teeth, remnants of Emperor Jahangir's disastrous Gardens of Babylon project. The original structure stood 3 stories tall, its panes stained the colors of precious gems to filter sunlight into mood lighting for exotic plants. The effect was magical, until midday turned the interior into a convection oven that literally cooked the specimens. Your foot crunches on something that isn't glass, it's a petrified pineapple, one of the first ever brought to India. The imperial botanists were so determined to grow tropical fruit, they built a furnace beneath the greenhouse and hired 20 punkawallas to simulate trade winds. The pineapples still refused to fruit, leading to the infamous Great Sweet Lime Conspiracy, where servants bought Caribbean imports and stuck them on local plants. Ahead, a twisted metal frame holds the remains of the monsoon machine, a water-wheel-powered apparatus designed to replicate rainy seasons on demand. It worked beautifully for exactly 17 minutes before the pressure burst every pipe in the complex, flooding the emperor's private library with enough force to ink stain the ceiling. That suspiciously vibrant patch of kikar grass? The final revenge of head gardener Yusuf, who secretly replanted all that failed experiments here after Jahangir abandoned the project. His journal entry reads, "Let the desert teach what the emperor wouldn't learn." Historians still argue whether this was ecological wisdom or petty spite. As you leave, the setting sun sets the remaining glass shards ablaze with color, a final, unintended masterpiece of light refraction that paints the garden in fleeting rainbows. The plants never stood a chance. The corpse flower's secret. The air grows thick with a scent like rotting meat as you stumble upon the garden of forbidden botany, where the Mughals cultivated plants so dangerous, they required a royal license to even look at them. That pulsating purple bloom ahead? Datura megalica, a strain bred to open its petals only when someone lied within earshot. Concubines used it to detect cheating lovers, until the emperor realized it also reacted to political diplomacy. Your sleeve brushes against Zahari-ishq, poison of love, a creeping vine whose thorns deliver a toxin that causes temporary blindness, originally used in initiation rites for Sufi mystics. The Imperial Guard later weaponized it by planting it beneath prison windows. The current groundskeeper insists the vines still twitch toward the sound of a rattling keychain. Ahead, a circle of blackened earth marks where the legendary corpse flower once grew, a carrion-scented monstrosity the size of a bullock cart. Jahangir imported it from Sumatra to impress visitors, not realizing its stench could induce vomiting at 50 paces. The solution? A team of attar-drenched eunuchs who'd rush in with perfumed fans whenever VIPs visited. The flower mysteriously died the same week as the emperor's most annoying courtier. That glint in the soil? A broken emerald viewing lens from the botanical hazard suits, leather outfit studded with gems believed to neutralize plant toxins. They worked splendidly until someone noticed the lenses also magnified sunlight enough to set the wearer's beard on fire. As you retreat, a single datura pod bursts open at your feet, releasing seeds carved with tiny Allah inscriptions, the work of a mystic who believed even poison could be holy if used with intention. The garden keeps its secrets well. The sundial's last trick. The setting sun transforms the garden into a hall of mirrors as you discover the sunset sundial, a final, vicious prank by head gardener Murad on the empire that fired him. The marble face is carved with backwards numerals, so the shadow appears to move counterclockwise. But the real genius is the Noman's hidden lens, which focuses the last rays of dusk into a beam that ignites a different flower bed each evening. Your fingers trace the sundial's secret inscription, "Time wounds, all heals." Murad spent his retirement carving this masterpiece, knowing the imperial astronomers would be forced to either admit its brilliance or live with a sundial that literally set their gardens on fire. They chose the fires. Ahead, a patch of rain lilies marks where the revenge gardener once grew, Murad's personal collection of weeds that resembled precious blooms from a distance. He planted them along processional routes, giving visiting dignitaries the impression the empire couldn't even grow proper roses. The current groundskeeper still finds bombax saber seeds disguised as rare orchids in the soil. That glint in the grass? A fire coin, one of the emergency tokens minted to pay firefighters during sundial-induced blazes. The metal contains a cooling alloy of silver and neem extract, a formula lost when the mint master accidentally fell into his own furnace. As the last light fades, the sundial's shadow stretches into the perfect shape of a pruning shear, Murad's final joke on an empire that thought it could control nature. The garden remembers its rebels best. Dusk settles like a blanket of cuss roots over the exhausted garden. Somewhere beyond these walls, a street vendor sells gulab jamun made from descendant roses of the same bushes nobles once duelled over. The peacocks roost in trees that were saplings when emperors still believed they could design paradise. You sink onto a bench worn smooth by centuries of tired gardeners, its legs uneven from supporting so many hidden dreams. The earth exhales the day's heat in a sigh of jasmine and damp clay. Some say if you listen closely at this hour, you can hear the champa trees whispering the names of everyone who ever loved them. The first fireflies emerge like lost constellations, living heirs to the jeweled nets once hung to mimic stars. Their light glints off a half-buried time coin near your foot, its mint mark too worn to read. King or flower? Tradition or rebellion? The garden stopped keeping score generations ago. As your eyelids grow heavy, the boundaries blur between Mughal topiary and modern weeds, between history and the scent of mulsari blossoms that will be someone else's nostalgia tomorrow. The night guard's distant whistle becomes the same note eunuchs once used to summon messenger parrots. The last awake things are the Ratki Rani vines, unfurling their intoxicating perfume to guide the moon across the sky. And perhaps, if the legends are true, the ghost of head gardener Murad, still chuckling as he trims the edges of reality with invisible shears. The stones grow warm with remembered sunlight. The ants file their final reports. And the garden, at last, surrenders to dreams. The moonlight mint. The rising moon reveals a curious patch of silver foliage, the remnants of the Mughal Empire's most secretive economic experiment. These Rupaya tulsi plants were genetically engineered to grow leaves containing trace amounts of silver, harvested monthly to mint emergency coinage during sieges. Run your fingers along their velvety leaves and you'll still detect the metallic aftertaste that doomed the project. Turns out silver-infused herbs make terrible biryani. That circular depression ahead? The lunar still, where alchemists distilled moonlight into liquid argentum using parabolic mirrors and specially treated lotus blossoms. Their ledgers claim one monsoon night's harvest could plate a dagger's hilt, though historians still debate whether this was metallurgy or monsoon-induced madness. The current groundskeeper swears the pit fills with quicksilver on full moon nights, though you suspect he's been sampling the ceremonial bang again. Your foot kicks a tarnished moon die, a coin press bearing the emperor's profile on one side and the sacred OM symbol on the other. The hybrid design caused riots among Orthodox clerics until someone pointed out the coins bought equally well at brothels and temples. The Mintmaster's solution? A secret third face that appeared only when the coin was spun under moonlight, showing, well, let's just say it explained why so many coins went missing from the treasury. As you leave, a sudden breeze sends the silver leaves tinkling like a ghostly cash register, the same sound that once lulled generations of guards to sleep while the royal treasurer adjusted the books. Some traditions never change. The Saffron Conspiracy. A golden stain on the garden wall marks the heart of history's most aromatic heist, the Great Saffron Diversion of 1632. That seemingly innocent rose trellis? Its hollow vines once concealed nearly half a ton of stolen Kashmiri keza, smuggled out in daily installments by a syndicate of perfumers, pastry chefs, and one very determined elephant driver. The operation collapsed when the emperor's new Greek physician prescribed saffron baths for gout, causing demand to outpace even the thieves' ambitions. Your fingers come away yellow from brushing the apology roses, a strain specially bred to produce saffron-scented pollen as tribute after the scandal. The gardener's ledgers show these blooms were planted in exact proportion to each conspirator's prison sentence, 12 bushes per lashed back, 30 per amputated hand. Yet somehow, the roses closest to the imperial kitchens are always the most fragrant. Ahead lies the saffron court, where accused smugglers were tried under a canopy of keza-dyed silk that rained golden dust on the guilty. The system worked flawlessly until a breeze blew the evidence onto everyone, resulting in the only recorded case of an entire courtroom being sentenced to community service. That glint in the soil? A broken coal bottle from the blindfold test, where inspectors would identify stolen saffron by smell alone. The current groundskeeper still uses the technique, though these days it's mostly to catch kitchen staff watering down the Kia. As you leave, a single honeybee zigzags drunkenly past, descendant of the infamous saffron drone strain that produced hallucinogenic honey from the contraband flowers. Their hives were supposedly destroyed, but every autumn, palace staff still report strangely vivid dreams after tea service. The Emerald Lake Illusion. What appears to be a shimmering pond is actually the garden's greatest trick, a water surface made entirely of crushed malachite tiles, designed to dazzle visitors while conserving precious irrigation. The Mughals called it Fukaya, the deceiver's pool, and stocked it with glass fish that moved via hidden clockwork. That suspicious ripple? Just the last surviving mechanical carp, its gears now clogged with 3 centuries of dust and broken promises. Your shadow stretches across the fake lake in impossible ways, an effect achieved by angled mirrors beneath the water's surface. The architects originally installed them to create the illusion of depth, until clever courtiers realized the mirrors could also reflect secret hand signals during treaty negotiations. The resulting scandal led to the first recorded use of the phrase plausible deniability. Ahead, a dry fountain bears the scars of the wine fountain incident, when a drunken noble convinced the emperor that malachite powder turned alcohol emerald green without affecting the taste. The resulting hangovers were so legendary, the imperial physician prescribed them as a treatment for excessive cheerfulness. That glint in the waves? A surviving water coin, specially minted to test the pool's depth. If it sank, you owed the emperor a favor; if it floated, he owed you one. The system worked until someone noticed the mintmaster had been producing hollow versions for his friends. As twilight falls, the fake lake performs its final magic, absorbing the day's last light to glow like actual liquid jade. It's a convincing illusion, just like the empire's promise that this garden would last forever. The rebellion vine. A defiant tangle of Giloy vines erupts through the marble, their heart-shaped leaves hiding a dangerous secret. This is the infamous Inqilabi bell, the revolution creeper. Each stem contains enough natural tetracycline to cure dysentery, knowledge rebel medics used to treat wounded freedom fighters right under the emperor's nose. Those suspicious knotholes? Not insect damage, but bullet scars from when the royal guards tried, and failed, to shoot the stubborn plant into submission. Your fingers trace braille-like ridges on a surviving leaf, actually coded resistance messages pressed into the growing foliage with specially designed rings. The most famous reads water the roots, the flowers will come, though historians still debate whether this was botany advice or a call to arms. Ahead lies that pharmacy of the oppressed, a hollow peepal tree where underground healers stored Giloy extracts in blown glass vials disguised as perfume bottles. The system worked beautifully until a suspicious harem eunuch confiscated a shipment, tried it as hair oil, and accidentally cured his baldness. That glint in the undergrowth? A broken spectacle lens from the movement's most unlikely hero, a nearsighted imperial botanist who accidentally mislabeled entire shipments of medicinal plants to the resistance. His official punishment was early retirement, though rumor says he spent his final years tending the very vines he was supposed to destroy. As monsoon clouds gather, the vines begin their nightly ritual, unfurling new leaves at speeds visible to the naked eye, just as they did when bandaging the wounds of an empire's conscience. The Clockwork Menagerie. A faint ticking beneath the roses leads you to the garden's most whimsical secret, the buried remains of Jahangir's mechanical zoo. That brass peacock protruding from the soil? Part of an automaton that once strutted on actual hourworm gears, spreading jeweled tail feathers every noon to the delight of courtiers and the horror of real peacocks. The mechanism failed spectacularly during the emperor's birthday, when overwound peacocks began spinning uncontrollably like avian tops. Your foot strikes something metallic, a lion paw from the infamous Shiri Barbary that could roar by pumping rosewater through hidden pipes. The effect was majestic until mineral deposits distorted the roar into something resembling a dyspeptic cow, causing the emperor's prized war elephants to panic during a diplomatic visit. Ahead lies the aviary of False Dawn, where clockwork songbirds were programmed to sing 2 hours before sunrise so the emperor could claim he never slept. The birds were eventually retired when their increasingly erratic springs made them sound drunk and melancholy, according to court records, or like a cat in a washing tub, according to the Portuguese ambassador. That glint in the grass? A surviving wind-up key shaped like a lotus bud, the original universal tool for the menagerie. The current groundskeeper uses it to open wine bottles, continuing a tradition started by frustrated keepers who needed liquid courage to repair Jahangir's increasingly deranged designs. As you leave, a final gear clicks into place somewhere beneath your feet, releasing a ghostly birdsong that hasn't been heard since the British melted down the zoo for cannon fodder. The garden remembers its mechanical children too. The perfumed rebellion. The air grows thick with the scent of miti attar, not the usual earthy perfume, but something sharper, more dangerous. You found the Itracana, where rebellious perfumers once spiked imperial fragrances with truth serums and memory enhancers. Those suspiciously uniform cracks in the marble floor? Not earthquake damage, but stress fractures from the underground stills where dissidents distilled awareness essences from forbidden herbs. Your sleeve catches on a cuss root protruding like a smuggler's antenna, part of an elaborate early warning system. When authorities approached, perfumers would switch their stills to produce rosewater, using the same pipes that moments before had carried extracts of Brahmi for memory resistance training. The system worked perfectly until a new recruit confused the valves and accidentally got the entire harem high on improvised absinthe. Ahead stands the blame tree, a neem covered in nail scratches where each perfumer marked their monthly quota shortfalls. The scratches form a perfect map of the Deccan Plateau, either a coded rebellion message or someone really bad at accounting. Historians still argue. That sticky residue on the drying racks. The remains of Kufir Itra, a secret perfume that left invisible marks on skin to identify conspirators. The formula was lost when its creator deliberately spilled a vial into the Yamuna, staining the river pink for 3 days and giving away every spy in Delhi simultaneously. As you leave, a single drop of century-old Haina oil plummets from a broken pipe, releasing a scent that, for one fleeting moment, makes you remember what the garden smelled like before the empires came. The sundial's confession. The dying light reveals a sundial unlike any other, its face carved with the sins of the empire in florid Persian script. This is the Rozi Hisab, the Day of Reckoning dial, commissioned by a guilt-ridden prince to track not hours, but atrocities. Each numeral corresponds to a massacre, each hour line to a broken treaty. The shadow currently points to the year the poet stopped speaking, though ironically, the sundial itself has become the subject of countless protest poems. Your fingers trace a suspiciously smooth patch where one sin was chiseled away, likely the work of Aurangzeb's censors, though some say the stone itself rejected that particular lie. The current groundskeeper claims the erased passage grows back slightly larger every monsoon, like a scar stretching over time. Ahead lies the apology garden, where shrubs were planted in geometric patterns representing official regrets. The Gully Maafi, forgiveness rose, at its center blooms only when no political prisoners are held in the fort, a condition met exactly twice in 3 centuries. Both times, the head gardener noted in his log, the blooms appeared suspiciously wilted. That glint in the gravel? A Sin coin, minted to be left at the sundial's base as penance. The treasury collected them weekly to fund more wars, creating the empire's most cynical recycling program. As darkness falls, the sundial performs its final function, casting a shadow shaped like a hanging rope across the very spot where the idealistic prince who commissioned it was later executed. The garden's memory is longer than any dynasty's. The laughing tree. A sound like wind chimes reveals itself to be something far stranger, the Hansi Ka Ped, a banyan tree hung with thousands of tiny ceramic laughter masks. This was the Mughal version of a psychiatric ward, where melancholic nobles were sent to find their smile. Each mask represents an actual courtier's laugh, captured in clay by the empire's most obsessive eavesdropper, a deaf potter who claimed he could hear laughter through vibrations in his fingertips. Your sleeve brushes against a particularly grotesque mask, the infamous jester's last chuckle, molded the moment before its owner was executed for joking about the emperor's new hat. The current groundskeeper swears it still giggles when the Lu wind blows just right. Ahead lies the tickling pavilion, where court physicians treated depression with feather dusters and strategic ajwain oil applications. The treatment worked surprisingly well until patients started faking melancholy for the free massages, leading to the first documented case of therapeutic fraud. That glint in the roots. A broken ha-ha stick, used to prod nobles into smiling during official portraits. The sticks were retired after one particularly stubborn prince got stabbed with his own during a diplomatic photo, resulting in the only Mughal portrait featuring a genuinely happy subject. As you leave, a sudden gust sets the masks clattering, not random noise, but the distinct cadence of the emperor's own laugh, captured in clay the day his favorite falcon stole his turban. The tree remembers joy better than the empire ever did. The map of lost waters. Your foot sinks into unexpectedly damp earth, the last trace of the Nakshari Ab, a hydraulic map of the empire's rivers made entirely of controlled leaks. Those suspiciously straight cracks in the paving stones? Not poor craftsmanship, but the remnants of the Yamuna Channel, where engineers recreated the river's exact flow rate using hidden pipes and timed siphons. The system was designed to test irrigation projects, until someone realized it could also predict droughts by seeing which rivers dried first. Your fingers come away muddy from the Sind Depression, a perpetually wet patch where the Maps Indus River once flowed. The original engineer was from Sind and may have given his homeland an unfair advantage. During actual droughts, Sind's water supply mysteriously lasted weeks longer than the model predicted. Ahead lies the Whispering Delta, a network of terracotta pipes that amplified sound across the garden. Eunuchs would whisper updates into the Thrabian seed end, allowing messages to reach the Himalayan sector in minutes. The system collapsed when a monsoon flood turned the entire map into an actual swamp, drowning several important messages about not creating swamps. That glint in the mud? A water die, used to settle disputes about river rights. The 6 faces showed different outcomes: flood, drought, treaty, war, divine intervention, or, most frequently, roll again because the emperor changed his mind. As the moon rises, the ghostly outline of the subcontinent emerges in damp patches and reflected light, an empire reduced to water stains and memories, still whispering its secrets to anyone who'll listen. The Last Gardener's Gift. The garden's final secret reveals itself not through sight or sound, but scent, a sudden wave of cura so pure it stops you mid-step. This is the Khazan-e Khushbu, the treasure of fragrance, a single pandanus shrub cultivated in absolute secrecy by the last head gardener. He spent 40 years perfecting this one plant, crossbreeding dozens of varieties to capture the exact aroma of the garden's heyday. The leaves release their perfume only when stroked counterclockwise, a final act of defiance against empire's relentless forward march. Your fingertips come away glowing faintly with bioluminescent pollen, the gardener's private joke, bred into the plant from rare Himalayan fungi. On moonless nights, the shrub becomes a beacon for nightingales and nostalgic ghosts alike. The current groundskeeper claims the glow intensifies whenever someone sings pre-partition ghazals, though he might just be drunk on the plant side effect. Inhalation causes harmless, happy hallucinations of lost beauty. Ahead lies the Book of Soil, a ledger where the gardener recorded every plant's lineage in coded symbols only he understood. The last entry shows a champa flower crossed with what appears to be a cogwheel, perhaps his final attempt to merge nature and machine, or just senility setting in. Historians still argue. That glint at the shrub's base? The gardener's rusted cautori, its bowl worn thin from decades of collecting due to water, his masterpiece. The current groundskeeper still performs the ritual every dawn, though these days he uses bottled mineral water. Some traditions must adapt to survive. As dawn breaks, the shrub performs its final magic, releasing one concentrated burst of scent containing the exact aroma of the garden's first spring, its 1000th monsoon, and every moment in between. You leave as you arrived, barefoot, bewildered, and certain that paradise was never a place, but a moment's fragrance lingering on the breeze. The morning sun stretches the garden's shadows into impossible shapes, a last reminder that nothing here was ever quite what it seemed. Somewhere beyond these walls, a street vendor's cart squeaks under the weight of gulab jal distilled from descendant roses. A schoolchild crushes a neem leaf absent-mindedly, unleashing a medicinal scent that would have been worth its weight in silver 3 centuries ago. You pause at the half-open gate where you began, your soul stained with the colors of empire, ochre from the fake lake, emerald from the entrails, gold from the saffron conspiracy. The peacocks have begun their morning screeches, descendants of birds who once dined on crushed pearls and shredded imperial decrees. The garden exhales its final secret as you leave: paradise was never permanent, never perfect. just a series of fleeting moments, a bee drunk on rebel nectar, a sundial's shadow spelling truth, a laugh caught in ceramic, strung together by people who dared to believe beauty could outlast brutality. Your pocket weighs heavy with a single silver obossi, a moon die, and a glowing pollen stain that will fade by noon. The gate creaks shut behind you with the sound of 100 pruning shears being set down, 1,000 eunuchs exhaling, one old gardener finally resting. Beyond the walls, Delhi stirs, honking, bargaining, living. But here, for one last breath between sunrise and reality, the garden remains. Not as it was. Not as it should be. But as it is, flawed, fragrant, and finally free. The alchemist's folly. The crunch of something brittle underfoot reveals a trail of shattered crucibles leading to the garden's most infamous failure, the Chemia Khana, Alchemy Pavilion. These blue-glazed shards once held the doomed Project Golden Harvest, where imperial alchemists swore they could transmute marigolds into actual gold. The scarred earth still bears concentric circles where successive explosions sent over ambitious chemists flying. That suspiciously metallic-tasting rosemary nearby? The sole survivor of their experiments, now permanently laced with enough copper to set off airport scanners. Your fingers brush against a warped distillation coil, the very one that nearly succeeded in creating rosewater-infused mercury before someone pointed out drinking it would be marginally less fatal than the plague. The project's lone success? A perfume that made everything smell like gold for 3 days, resulting in the empire's only recorded case of olfactory inflation. Courtiers started charging gold for smelling like gold. Ahead lies the philosopher's patch, where alchemists buried their mistakes in unmarked graves. The current groundskeeper avoids this area during full moons, when the soil allegedly emits a faint blue glow and the buried flasks sometimes refill themselves. Historians still argue whether this was chemical residue or the world's slowest practical joke. That glint in the weeds? A failure medal, struck to honor particularly spectacular disasters. This one reads for valiant attempt number 247 at turning peacock feathers into emeralds. The mint master eventually ran out of bronze making these. As you leave, a sudden breeze carries the unmistakable scent of burning saffron, not a ghostly echo, but the current groundskeeper's nephew attempting to revive the experiments. Some lessons take centuries to learn. The Mirror Maze Massacre. 1,000 fragmented reflections assault your eyes as you stumble into the Arena Mughal ruins, what was once a dazzling infinity mirror maze designed to showcase Mughal wealth. Those ominous dark streaks on the broken glass? Not dirt, but the remains of the Great Vanity Uprising, when servants grew tired of noblemen admiring themselves and adjusted the angles to reflect everyone's worst features instead. The resulting sword fight left 7 mirrors shattered and 3 egos permanently damaged. Your distorted reflection reveals the maze's secret, alternating panels of clear glass and polished steel created layers of illusion. The architects originally intended this as a metaphor for the Empire's transparency, until someone realized it also made fantastic hiding spots. The Treasury Secretary was particularly fond of disappearing during audit season. Ahead lies the Blame Corridor, where courtiers would take wrong turns on purpose to accuse rivals of sabotage. The system worked beautifully until the Emperor got lost for 3 hours and emerged convinced his own mother had plotted against him. She hadn't, that time. That glint underfoot? A mirror shard souvenir, smuggled out by visitors as proof they'd navigated the maze. The black market trade collapsed when someone noticed all the shards showed suspiciously similar proof. As twilight falls, the remaining glass performs one final trick, projecting your reflection into empty spaces where 1,000 noblemen once preened. Their vanity outlived their dynasty by centuries. The Celestial Outhouse. The incongruous scent of sandalwood and sewage leads you to the Hawa Mahal's best-kept secret, the astrological toilet. This marble throne with zodiac inlays was no mere privy, but a divination device where court astrologers would read the emperor's deposits to predict harvest yields. That suspicious groove in the seat? Designed to collect samples without royal fingers getting dirty, the astrologer's fingers were apparently expendable. Your nose leads you to the star charts, not celestial maps, but the actual ventilation holes aligned so summer breezes would carry the smell toward whichever nobleman had recently displeased the emperor. The system was considered remarkably just until a wind shift during diplomatic talks resulted in the first recorded case of meteorological warfare. Ahead lies the infamous comet chamber, where particularly auspicious specimens were preserved in honey for further study. The practice ended abruptly when a visiting French ambassador mistook the jars for exotic jam. Historians still debate whether his subsequent praise of the earthy bouquet was diplomacy or dementia. That glint in the drainage channel? A constipation coin, minted to pay physicians when royal bowels failed to align with planetary movements. The coins were eventually melted down to make bells for the harem's cats, a fitting end for currency that was always full of crap. As you retreat, your sleeve catches on a surviving chain, its gold links tarnished by centuries of flushing with rosewater. The garden's grandeur had limits even the architects couldn't perfume away. The rebellion's radio. A peculiar buzzing emanates from what appears to be an ordinary neem tree, until you spot the beehive shaped like a Mughal crown. This is the remains of the Insilab radio, a resistance communication system that used honeycomb vibrations to transmit messages across Delhi. Rebel beekeepers would play specific raga melodies to make the bees dance in coded patterns, readable by trained apiarists miles away. The system worked flawlessly until a monsoon turned the hives into soggy amplifiers and accidentally broadcasted anti-imperial slogans across half the city. Your fingers trace grooves in the bark, are not insect damage, but frequency markers carved by the movement sound engineer, a deaf musician who claimed he could hear the hive's resistance through his teeth. The most famous inscription reads, "When the queen moves, the empire shakes," though historians still debate whether this referred to bees or the exiled Empress Zebu-en-Nisa. Ahead lies the Honeycomb Codex, wax tablets recording transmission protocols in hexagonal cells. The key tablet was supposedly eaten by a loyalist goat, though the current groundskeeper claims to have found it last summer, right before developing an uncanny ability to predict rainfall. That glint in the hollow? A broken Surma bottle used to dye messenger bees for identification. The scheme was abandoned when the bees started stinging officials in alphabetical order, making the resistance a little too obvious. As you leave, a single surviving resistance bee lands on your sleeve, its wings buzzing the opening notes of Ser Jahan Se Akka, a song that wouldn't be written for another 2 centuries. Some harmonies transcend time. The sundial's secret twin. The shadow you've been following all day suddenly moves against the sun, revealing the Chupa sundial, the garden's clandestine timekeeper used to schedule illegal activities. This upside-down replica hidden beneath the official sundial allowed conspirators to arrange meetings when real shadows pointed elsewhere. The mechanism was so precise, rebel astronomers used it to predict eclipses before the imperial stargazers, giving dissidents precious minutes to hide contraband. Your foot kicks the liar's gnomon, a detachable shadowcaster that could make noon appear to arrive early. Eunuchs used this to shorten tedious court sessions, until the emperor noticed his lunch was consistently overcooked. The subsequent investigation uncovered an entire underground economy of stolen time. Ahead lies the clockmaker's revenge, a buried chest containing 1001 tiny adjustments meant to gradually derail imperial chronology. The plot was discovered when someone noticed the emperor's birthday arrived 3 days early 2 years in a row. The would-be saboteur was sentenced to live by his own broken clocks, a fate worse than death for a punctuality-obsessed culture. That glint in the dirt? A time thief's shim, used to subtly tilt sundials and steal minutes from official events. The current groundskeeper still finds them scattered throughout the garden like horological landmines. As the sun sets, the secret sundial performs its final trick, its shadow spelling out "I told you so" in cursive Arabic across the face of its more respectable twin. Even empires can't control time forever. The perfumed prison. A cloying wave of Kiora and despair leads you to the Khushbu Kila, a gilded cage where disgraced nobles were punished with sensory overload. The hexagonal chamber's walls dripped with alternating attars designed to induce specific emotions: rage, saffron, remorse, myrrh, or in one memorable case, uncontrollable nostalgia for an ex-lover's hair oil. That suspiciously stained divan? The repentance couch, where prisoners would break down confessing to crimes they didn't commit just to escape the scent of overripe jasmine. Your fingers come away sticky from the chitres of shame vines, datura hybrids bred to weep narcotic sap when touched. Jailers would collect the droplets to make truth serums, unaware the plants had absorbed so much prisoner anxiety that the resulting concoctions caused paranoid hallucinations instead. Ahead lies the infamous scented shackles, leather restraints lined with perfume pouches that could be tightened or loosened based on cooperation. The system backfired when a resourceful princess realized biting the pouches created distraction aromas, allowing her to escape disguised as a florist, and inadvertently inventing modern aromatherapy. That glint in the corner? A broken Itter bottle labeled Regret No. 5, the Emperor's personal blend for political apologies. Analysis revealed it was just cheap rosewater with a single Nagamatha leaf for show. Some betrayals smell sweeter than others. As you retreat, the chamber's last surviving scent dispenser suddenly releases a puff of forgotten promises, a musky blend that, for one dizzying moment, makes you understand why so many prisoners signed whatever was put before them. The Mosaic Conspiracy. What appears to be random tilework suddenly resolves into a map of the empire's secret trade routes, the Chea Bazaar mosaic commissioned by a smuggling syndicate right under the emperor's nose. Those decorative blue triangles? Actually markings of customs checkpoints, while the ruby-red tessera show ideal spots for bribing guards. The artisans hid their work in plain sight for years by claiming it was an abstract interpretation of paradise, which, in a way, it was. Your shadow reveals the mosaic's genius. Different times of day highlight different routes as the sun moves. Summer solstice exposes opium trails, winter unveils gemstone paths, and equinoxes? Those show where to dump evidence when authorities get too close. The system worked flawlessly until a visiting Venetian merchant recognized his own smuggling ports and complimented the excellent intelligence work. Ahead lies the tile of treason, a single misplaced piece that, when removed, reveals a hollow containing centuries of blackmail material. The current groundskeeper uses it to store his lunch. That glint in the grout? A bribe bead, one of thousands sewn into clothing to pay off officials. The beads were color-coded by department. Lapis lazuli for tax collectors, carnelian for spice inspectors, and plain glass for unimportant clerks, who turned out to be the most expensive of all. As clouds pass overhead, the mosaic performs its final trick, the tiles darkening to reveal hidden waterways perfect for escaping the empire's grasp. Some maps refuse to be erased. The Fountain of False Promises. A dry basin filled with suspiciously placed stones turns out to be the infamous Suka fountain, designed to impress visitors with the illusion of water during droughts. Those random indentations? Actually precision carved to create the sound of bubbling water when wind passed through, while hidden Itter dispensers emitted fresh rain scent. The effect was so convincing, visiting diplomats would compliment the water's clarity until one tried to wash his hands and started a minor international incident. Your fingers trace the weeping spout, a carved face that supposedly cried real tears during ceremonies. The mechanism, the hidden reservoir of rosewater activated by stepping on a specific tile, was discovered when the emperor's new wife couldn't produce tears at their wedding and had to be assisted. The resulting scandal inspired Delhi's first divorce laws. Ahead lies the thirsty poet's bench, where bards would sit composing verses about imaginary water features for extra pay. The current groundskeeper still finds fragments of their work. Your laughter cascades like the dry fountain song, being a particular favorite of cynical tour guides. That glint in the drain? A water token, sold to villagers during droughts as future irrigation rights. The tokens were eventually redeemed, not with water, but with equally worthless positions in the imperial bureaucracy. Some scams never go out of style. As you leave, A sudden gust through the spouts creates an eerie moan, the fountain's final joke on an empire that promised nourishment but delivered only carefully engineered echoes. The chessboard lawn. The grass beneath your feet suddenly changes texture. You're standing on the Shatranji Holot, a living chessboard where nobles played with human pieces. Those suspiciously flat patches? Where pawns stood for hours awaiting orders, their loyalty ensured by planting their family's favorite flowers along their movement paths. The system worked beautifully until a clever concubine realized the floral patterns could be used to signal strategy, turning every game into a meta-battle of horticultural espionage. Your shadow falls across the suicide square, a darkened tile where unpopular pieces would accidentally expose themselves to attack. The current groundskeeper refuses to plant anything there, claiming the soil still whispers advice to potential victims. Ahead lies the Gambit Grove, where defeated pieces were sent to cool their heels among Datra bushes. Many emerged with radical new strategies, or just radical hallucinations that somehow won the next match. Historians still argue whether this was doping or divine inspiration. That glint in the turf? A betting tag, used to wager everything from concubines to provinces on single matches. The tags were eventually banned when someone realized the same Kashmir province had been wagered 17 times simultaneously. As dusk falls, the board performs its final move, long shadows transforming the lawn into a chowpar game, where emperors and servants alike had equal chance of being knocked off the board. The garden remembers all its players. The last lantern. A single flickering light defies the gathering dusk, the Akhri Chirag, a surviving gas lantern fueled by centuries-old rose oil reserves. This isn't just illumination, it's the final beacon of the Rat Sagar, Night Sea, tradition, where gardeners would float thousands of lamps on the canals to guide ancestral spirits home. The modern groundskeeper still lights it nightly, though these days the oil is half diesel and half wishful thinking. Your fingers come away sooty from that smoke ledger, a brass plate where generations recorded which spirits appeared each year. The last intact entry reads Night of Broken Promises, saw Begum Sahiba cursing the emperor's ghost with a shoe. Left extra lamp oil. Ahead lies the lantern of lost causes, a smaller fixture reserved for illuminating the garden's failures, wilted hybrids, dry fountains, the occasional exiled prince. The current groundskeeper has taken to using it for reading poetry, proving some failures outlast their original purpose. That glint in the lamplight? A ghost coin, left as payment for particularly helpful spirits. The treasury tried to confiscate them until multiple collectors reported the coins burned their fingers. Now they're left undisturbed except by the occasional brave, or greedy, tourist. As the flame sputters its last, the garden whispers its final secret: paradise was never about perfection. It was about showing up each dusk with fresh oil and stubborn hope, season after season, empire after empire. The light dies. The remembering continues. The darkness settles like a blanket of cuss roots over the sleeping garden. Somewhere beyond these walls, a night watchman's torch flickers, unknowingly mirroring the lantern ritual his Mughal predecessors would find familiar. The peacocks roost in trees that were saplings when emperors still believed they could design eternity. You pause at the gate where you began, your pockets heavy with fragments, a time thief's shim, a rebellion bee's wing, the lingering scent of failure and roses. The garden has given you its truths wrapped in jokes, its history perfumed with lies. The last awake things are the Rakhi Rani vines, unfurling their narcotic blossoms to the moon, and perhaps, if the legends are true, the ghost of head gardener Murad, still pruning the edges of dreams with his rusted shears. Beyond the walls, Delhi's chaos continues, honking, bargaining, living. But here, in this breath between night and morning, the garden remains. Not as it was in paintings. Not as it exists in history books. But as it is, flawed, fragrant, and finally free of empires. The stones exhale their stored warmth. The ants file their final reports. Somewhere, a single surviving mechanical bird twitches a rusted wing. And the earth, as it always has, waits for the next gardeners. The clockwork lotus. A faint ticking beneath the water lilies reveals the garden's most delicate secret, a fully mechanical lotus flower that still opens and closes with the dawn. This was Emperor Jahangir's eternal bloom, designed to outlast mere biological flowers. Each brass petal unfolds with perfect precision, except for one that's always stuck at half-mast, the result of a frustrated engineer's final act of rebellion before being executed for missing deadlines. Your fingers brush against the central stamen to discover it's actually a wind-up key. 3 full turns and the blossom begins to play a distorted version of Rag Malhar, the monsoon's raga, though decades of moisture have turned the tune into something closer to a drunkard's lullaby. The current groundskeeper swears it plays clearer on nights when the real lotuses refuse to bloom, as if trying to shame them into compliance. Ahead lies the liar's pollen, tiny brass filings scattered around the mechanism to make it appear the fake flower attracted real bees. The ruse worked until the imperial beekeeper noticed his workers returning with metallic stomachs and suspiciously perfect geometric honeycombs. That glint in the shallows? A single gear from the backup bloom, an even more ambitious prototype that could follow the sun like a miniature heliotrope. It was scrapped when the gears kept getting jammed with hopeful ladybugs trying to mate with the shiny petals. As you leave, the lotus performs its final trick, a hidden compartment in its base slides open to reveal a miniature portrait of the engineer's true love, along with a carefully folded resignation letter dated 1 day after the project deadline. Some rebellions bloom late. The whispering hedge. The hedge maze ahead isn't just green, it's listening. These neem bushes were specially pruned to form natural sound channels, creating a living surveillance system. That suspiciously perfect archway? The eunuch's ear, where servants would overhear courtiers' conversations and relay them through a network of hollow vines. The system worked beautifully until the vine started growing thorns that pricked only when someone lied. Your whisper bounces back to you in 3 different accents, a quirk of the voice garden experiment, where linguists tried to recreate imperial dialects using only leaf vibrations. The project was abandoned when the bushes developed a tendency to mock the emperor's stutter every monsoon season. Ahead lies the sighing corner, where the hedges were trimmed to amplify melancholic sounds. Nobles would come here to sigh poetically, unaware their dramatic exhales were being collected in leather bellows to pipe through the harem baths as mood music. That glint in the foliage? A sound coin used to pay the deaf gardeners who maintained the system. The coins had serrated edges so they could be heard when dropped, a thoughtful touch undone when someone realized the gardeners were just watching shadows to detect payments. As evening falls, the hedges begin their nightly ritual, leaves turning precisely to maximize moonlight absorption, just as they did when hiding the sounds of 1,000 stolen kisses. The garden remembers every secret it's ever swallowed. The alchemy of absence. The air grows heavy with the scent of nothing. You found the void garden, where Mughal botanists attempted to cultivate perfect silence. These circular patches of bare earth were planted with anti-herbs designed to cancel specific sounds, hush vine for gossip, muffle mint for crying babies, and the infamous forgotten root that allegedly erased arguments from memory. The experiment failed when the gardeners realized the plants only worked if no one was listening. Your shadow falls across the blank rose, a white marble replica placed where the sound-cancelling roses refused to grow. Visitors would whisper confessions to it, believing the stone absorbed secrets, until a clever concubine noticed the hollow base functioned as an excellent listening tube for the guards' barracks. Ahead lies the echo trap, a parabolic depression that collects and holds sounds for hours before releasing them distorted. The current groundskeeper avoids this area at dusk, when it still sometimes spits out a garbled rendition of Aurangzeb banning music in 1668. That glint in the dirt? A silence coin, paid to the royal librarian for every forbidden book burned. The coins were eventually melted down to cast temple bells, a irony not lost on the deaf metalworker who did the recasting. As you leave, a sudden pocket of dead air swallows your footsteps whole, the garden's final joke on an empire that tried too hard to control what couldn't be heard. Some absences speak loudest. The sundial's secret twin. The shadow you've been following all day suddenly moves against the sun, revealing the Chupa sundial, the garden's clandestine timekeeper used to schedule illegal activities. This upside-down replica hidden beneath the official sundial allowed conspirators to arrange meetings when real shadows pointed elsewhere. The mechanism was so precise, rebel astronomers used it to predict eclipses before the imperial stargazers, giving dissidents precious minutes to hide contraband. Your foot kicks that liar's gnomon, a detachable shadowcaster that could make noon appear to arrive early. Eunuchs used this to shorten tedious court sessions, until the emperor noticed his lunch was consistently overcooked. The subsequent investigation uncovered an entire underground economy of stolen time. Ahead lies the clockmaker's revenge, a buried chest containing 1001 tiny adjustments meant to gradually derail imperial chronology. The plot was discovered when someone noticed the emperor's birthday arrived 3 days early 2 years in a row. The would-be saboteur was sentenced to live by his own broken clocks, a fate worse than death for a punctuality-obsessed culture. That glint in the dirt? A time thief's shim, used to subtly tilt sundials and steal minutes from official events. The current groundskeeper still finds them scattered throughout the garden like horological landmines. As the sun sets, the secret sundial performs its final trick, its shadow spelling out "I told you so" in cursive Arabic across the face of its more respectable twin. Even empires can't control time forever. The Moonlight Mint. The rising moon reveals a curious patch of silver foliage, the remnants of the Mughal Empire's most secretive economic experiment. These Rupiah tulsi plants were genetically engineered to grow leaves containing trace amounts of silver, harvested monthly to mint emergency coinage during sieges. Run your fingers along their velvety leaves and you'll still detect the metallic aftertaste that doomed the project. Turns out silver-infused herbs make terrible biryani. That circular depression ahead? The lunar still, where alchemists distilled moonlight into liquid argentum using parabolic mirrors and specially treated lotus blossoms. Their ledgers claim one monsoon night's harvest could plate a dagger's hilt, though historians still debate whether this was metallurgy or monsoon-induced madness. The current groundskeeper swears the pit fills with quicksilver on full moon nights, though you suspect he's been sampling the ceremonial bang again. Your foot kicks a tarnished moon die, a coin press bearing the emperor's profile on one side and the sacred OM symbol on the other. The hybrid design caused riots among Orthodox clerics until someone pointed out the coins bought equally well at brothels and temples. The Mintmaster's solution? A secret third face that appeared only when the coin was spun under moonlight, showing, well, let's just say it explained why so many coins went missing from the treasury. As you leave, a sudden breeze sends the silver leaves tinkling like a ghostly cash register, the same sound that once lulled generations of guards to sleep while the royal treasurer adjusted the books. Some traditions never change. The rebellion vine. A defiant tangle of Giloy vines erupts through the marble, their heart-shaped leaves hiding a dangerous secret. This is the infamous Inquilabi bell, the revolution creeper. Each stem contains enough natural tetracycline to cure dysentery, knowledge rebel medics used to treat wounded freedom fighters right under the emperor's nose. Though suspicious, not holes? Not insect damage, but bullet scars from when the royal guards tried, and failed, to shoot the stubborn plant into submission. Your fingers trace braille-like ridges on a surviving leaf, actually coded resistance messages pressed into the growing foliage with specially designed rings. The most famous reads water the roots, the flowers will come, though historians still debate whether this was botany advice or a call to arms. Ahead lies that pharmacy of the oppressed, a hollow peepal tree where underground healers stored Giloy extracts in blown glass vials disguised as perfume bottles. The system worked beautifully until a suspicious harem eunuch confiscated a shipment, tried it as hair oil, and accidentally cured his baldness. That glint in the undergrowth? A broken spectacle lens from the movement's most unlikely hero, a nearsighted imperial botanist who accidentally mislabeled entire shipments of medicinal plants to the resistance. His official punishment was early retirement, though rumor says he spent his final years tending the very vines he was supposed to destroy. As monsoon clouds gather, the vines begin their nightly ritual, unfurling new leaves at speeds visible to the naked eye, just as they did when bandaging the wounds of an empire's conscience. The perfumed rebellion. The air grows thick with the scent of miti attar, not the usual earthy perfume, but something sharper, more dangerous. You've found the Itracana, where rebellious perfumers once spiked imperial fragrances with truth serums and memory enhancers. Those suspiciously uniform cracks in the marble floor? Not earthquake damage, but stress fractures from the underground stills where dissidents distilled awareness essences from forbidden herbs. Your sleeve catches on a cuss root protruding like a smuggler's antenna, part of an elaborate early warning system. When authorities approached, perfumers would switch their stills to produce rosewater, using the same pipes that moments before had carried extracts of Brahmi for memory resistance training. The system worked perfectly until a new recruit confused the valves and accidentally got the entire harem high on improvised absinthe. Ahead stands the blame tree, a neem covered in nail scratches where each perfumer marked their monthly quota shortfalls. The scratches form a perfect map of the Deccan Plateau, either a coded rebellion message or someone really bad at accounting. Historians still argue. That sticky residue on the drying racks. The remains of Kufiritra, a secret perfume that left invisible marks on skin to identify conspirators. The formula was lost when its creator deliberately spilled a vial into the Yamuna, staining the river pink for 3 days and giving away every spy in Delhi simultaneously. As you leave, a single drop of century-old henna oil plummets from a broken pipe, releasing a scent that, for one fleeting moment, makes you remember what the garden smelled like before the empires came. The sundial's confession. The dying light reveals a sundial unlike any other, its face carved with the sins of the empire in florid Persian script. This is the Rozi Hisab, the Day of Reckoning dial, commissioned by a guilt-ridden prince to track not hours, but atrocities. Each numeral corresponds to a massacre, each hour line to a broken treaty. The shadow currently points to the year the poet stopped speaking, though ironically, the sundial itself has become the subject of countless protest poems. Your fingers trace a suspiciously smooth patch where one sin was chiseled away, likely the work of Aurangzeb's censors, though some say the stone itself rejected that particular lie. The current groundskeeper claims the erased passage grows back slightly larger every monsoon, like a scar stretching over time. Ahead lies the apology garden, where shrubs were planted in geometric patterns representing official regrets. The gully Mafi, forgiveness rose, at its center blooms only when no political prisoners are held in the fort, a condition met exactly twice in 3 centuries. Both times, the head gardener noted in his log, the blooms appeared suspiciously wilted. That glint in the gravel? At Sin coin, minted to be left at the sundial's base as penance. The treasury collected them weekly to fund more wars, creating the empire's most cynical recycling program. As darkness falls, the sundial performs its final function, casting a shadow shaped like a hanging rope across the very spot where the idealistic prince who commissioned it was later executed. The garden's memory is longer than any dynasty's. The last gardener's gift. The garden's final secret reveals itself not through sight or sound, but scent, a sudden wave of cura so pure it stops you mid-step. This is the Kazana Khushbu, the treasure of fragrance, a single pandanus shrub cultivated in absolute secrecy by the last head gardener. He spent 40 years perfecting this one plant, crossbreeding dozens of varieties to capture the exact aroma of the garden's heyday. The leaves release their perfume only when stroked counterclockwise, a final act of defiance against empire's relentless forward march. Your fingertips come away glowing faintly with bioluminescent pollen, the gardener's private joke, bred into the plant from rare Himalayan fungi. On moonless nights, the shrub becomes a beacon for nightingales and nostalgic ghosts alike. The current groundskeeper claims the glow intensifies whenever someone sings pre-partition ghazals, though he might just be drunk on the plant's side effect. Inhalation causes harmless, happy hallucinations of lost beauty. Ahead lies the Book of Soil, a ledger where the gardener recorded every plant's lineage in coded symbols only he understood. The last entry shows a champa flower crossed with what appears to be a cogwheel, perhaps his final attempt to merge nature and machine, or just senility setting in. Historians still argue. That glint at the shrub's base? The gardener's rusted cautori, its bowl worn thin from decades of collecting due to water his masterpiece. The current groundskeeper still performs the ritual every dawn, though these days he uses bottled mineral water. Some traditions must adapt to survive. As dawn breaks, the shrub performs its final magic, releasing one concentrated burst of scent containing the exact aroma of the garden's first spring, its 1000th monsoon, and every moment in between. You leave as you arrived, barefoot, bewildered, and certain that paradise was never a place, but a moment's fragrance lingering on the breeze. The morning sun stretches the garden's shadows into impossible shapes, a last reminder that nothing here was ever quite what it seemed. Somewhere beyond these walls, a street vendor's cart squeaks under the weight of gulab jal distilled from descendant roses. A schoolchild crushes a neem leaf absent-mindedly, unleashing a medicinal scent that would have been worth its weight in silver 3 centuries ago. You pause at the half-open gate where you began, your soul stained with the colors of empire. Ochre from the fake lake, emerald from the entrails, gold from the saffron conspiracy. The peacocks have begun their morning screeches, descendants of birds who once dined on crushed pearls and shredded imperial decrees. The garden exhales its final secret as you leave. Paradise was never permanent, never perfect. Just a series of fleeting moments, a bee drunk on rebel nectar, a sundial's shadow spelling truth, a laugh caught in ceramic, strung together by people who dared to believe beauty could outlast brutality. Your pocket weighs heavy with a single silver obossi, a moon die, and a glowing pollen stain that will fade by noon. The gate creaks shut behind you with the sound of 100 pruning shears being set down, 1,000 eunuchs exhaling, one old gardener finally resting. Beyond the walls, Delhi stirs, honking, bargaining, living. But here, for one last breath between sunrise and reality, the garden remains. Not as it was. Not as it should be. But as it is, flawed, fragrant, and finally free. The butterfly throne. A shimmer of sapphire wings reveals the garden's most delicate secret, a living throne woven entirely from butterfly cocoons. This was Empress Nur Jahan's Takhti Parwana, where each silken strand was harvested at dawn by blindfolded weavers to prevent color contamination. The structure pulsed with metamorphosis. As new butterflies emerged, attendants would replace them with fresh cocoons in an endless cycle of rebirth. Until, of course, the emperor's birthday banquet, when hundreds of newly hatched monarchs mistook his jeweled turban for a giant flower. Your fingertip brushes against a still intact chrysalis, one of the infamous clockwork cocoons designed to hatch on command during diplomatic visits. The genetic modifications worked too well. The resulting butterflies imprinted on the French ambassador and followed him home, causing the first recorded case of international entomological espionage. Ahead lies the wing mirror, a polished disc where the throne's colors were tested against various complexions. The Empress rejected 17 shades before settling on Midnight Sigh, a blue so deep it made pale-skinned nobles look ill and dark-skinned courtiers glow like moonlight. Historians still argue whether this was aesthetics or strategy. That iridescent glint in the grass? A scale coin, currency paid to the butterfly farmers. The tiny discs were intentionally made to resemble wings so they'd blow away during audits, a trick that worked until monsoon winds carried an entire season's payroll into the harem baths. As you leave, a single surviving Mughal blue butterfly alights on your shoulder, its wings still genetically programmed to seek out the exact shade of Nur Jahan's favorite lapis lazuli necklace. Some instincts outlast empires. The whispering sundial. The sundial ahead isn't telling time, it's reciting it. This guardial sundial was engineered with hidden resonating chambers that transformed shadow movements into audible tones. Each hour played a different raga, with noon represented by the deep boom of a temple bell, until the mechanism was adjusted to play Shahai wedding music whenever the tax collector approached. Your palm against the warm marble triggers a distorted chime, the remnants of the monsoon mode that sped up timekeeping during rainy seasons to account for depressed moods. The feature was scrapped when nobles realized they could use it to age wine artificially, resulting in several very confused vintages. Ahead lies the complaint groove, a worn channel where gardeners would drag coins to register grievances. The pitch of the resulting screech indicated severity, a trick borrowed from elephant trainers. The system worked until the treasurer realized the gardeners had composed an entire protest symphony using nothing but coin drags. That glint in the gnome's shadow? Of time shaving, gold foil used to subtly alter the dial's readings. The foil was applied with such precision that for 3 glorious years, the emperor's aging mother actually appeared to be getting younger, until someone noticed her portrait painter was just flattering her. As the sun sets, the sundial performs its final trick. The shadow doesn't disappear but instead forms the exact shape of the first head gardener's missing finger, lost to an overzealous pruning incident. Even in stillness, the garden remembers. The perfumer's prison. The air grows thick with the cloying scent of trapped flowers. You found the Itricade, a circular garden where rebellious perfumers were sentenced to create fragrances from memory. Those suspiciously uniform beds? Each contains a single note, rose, jasmine, sandalwood, isolated like musical instruments in an orchestra pit. Prisoners would be blindfolded and forced to recreate imperial favorites, with their noses as their only guides. Your sleeve catches on a scent whipping post, where unsuccessful attempts were encouraged with bundles of overpowering herbs. The current groundskeeper still finds shreds of perfumer's notebooks buried here, tiny origami scent strips that unfold to reveal increasingly desperate formulations. One reads simply, Day 147, added more saffron. Still doesn't smell like home. Ahead stands the titers still, a delicate apparatus for collecting prisoners' emotional reactions. The resulting essence of desperation became a surprise bestseller among melancholy poets until someone noticed it worked alarmingly well as a truth serum. That sticky residue on the distillation pipes. The remains of the apologiata, a formula so perfect it could allegedly make anyone forgive anything. The recipe was lost when the perfumer who created it used the last batch to escape, walking straight past his guards as they stood weeping nostalgic tears. As you leave, a single drop of century-old Heine oil falls from a rusted pipe, still carrying the unmistakable top note of a homesick perfumer's final, perfect recreation of his mother's hair oil. Some memories outlast captivity. The Firefly Codex. The gathering dusk reveals flickering green script across the lawn, not magic, but the last surviving Jugnu Pustak, a living book written in firefly colonies. Each paragraph was cultivated in separate hedges, with gardeners using sugar water to train the insects' nightly patterns. The text. A secret history of the empire, visible only to those patient enough to stand motionless until full dark. Your breath disrupts a glowing sentence, the infamous lost chapter that allegedly documented palace coups in real time. The fireflies forming these words were exterminated after predicting an assassination too accurately, though their descendants still regroup annually on the victim's death anniversary. Ahead lies the inkwell tree, where backup fireflies were stored in hollowed-out goods during daylight. The system worked beautifully until a hungry parrot discovered the goods made excellent snack containers, resulting in several unexpectedly illuminated bird droppings. That faint green smear on your palm? Phosphorescent honey, harvested from bees that fed on firefly nectar. The imperial kitchens used it to create glow-in-the-dark desserts until a banquet guest mistook it for witchcraft and started a minor riot. As true night falls, the fireflies perform their final act, spelling out not Persian script but the DNA sequence of a flower that went extinct 3 centuries ago. The garden remembers in ways we're only beginning to understand. The sundial's shadow play. The setting sun transforms the sundial's shadow into something unexpected, a precise puppet show dramatizing the empire's history. This was head gardener Abbas's secret masterpiece, microscopic etchings on the gnomon that, at certain angles, projected caricatures of emperors onto nearby walls. That elongated nose currently stretching across 3 flower beds? Allegedly just a trick of the light, though it does resemble Shah Jahan's exact profile during his more taxes for Taj Mahal phase. Your fingers trace nearly invisible grooves, the comedy track where Abbas recorded his most subversive shadow plays. The current groundskeeper still activates them during full moons by placing a particular jasmine blossom on the dial's edge, a trigger no historian has ever decoded. Ahead lies the applause patch, where specially bred thunder grass would rustle on cue when shadows performed well. The grass was uprooted after mysteriously applauding an unflattering portrayal of Aurangzeb's tax policies, though its descendants still perk up during particularly dramatic sunsets. That glint in the gravel? A laughter coin, tossed by nobles who understood the real joke. The coins were minted with a smiling sun on one side and a frowning moon on the other, a not-so-subtle commentary on imperial mood swings. As darkness falls, the sundial's final act begins. The shadow not of the gnomon but of Abbas himself appears, pruning an imaginary hedge with exaggerated care. The garden's greatest comedian takes his last bow every night, whether anyone watches or not. The Mosaic Conspiracy. What appears to be decorative tile work suddenly resolves into a map of the empire's secret trade routes, the Cheah Bazaar mosaic commissioned by smugglers right under imperial noses. Those floral patterns? Actually coded symbols, pomegranates for opium roots, peacocks for gem smugglers, and suspiciously phallic eggplants for, well, the less said about that the better. Your shadow reveals the mosaic's genius, different angles of light highlight different routes. Morning exposes gold smuggling paths, afternoon shows spice diversions, and dusk? That's when the real masterpiece appears, a perfect map of the Yamana's underground tributaries, ideal for discreet drownings. Ahead lies the traitor's tile, a loose piece revealing hollow compartments beneath. The current groundskeeper uses them to store gardening tools, continuing a 300-year tradition of pretending not to notice the occasional bloodstain. That glint in the grout? A smuggler's tooth, actually a carved ivory peg used to measure gem purity. Dentists made fortunes replacing these after overzealous customs officers started checking mouths at city gates. As clouds pass overhead, the mosaic performs its final trick, the tiles absorbing moisture to reveal hidden waterways in vivid blue. Some maps refuse to stay buried, just like the truths they represent. The Laughing Tree. A sound like wind chimes reveals itself to be something far stranger, the Hansi Ka Ped, a banyan hung with thousands of tiny ceramic laughter masks. Each captures a unique courtier's giggle, from the emperor's booming guffaw to the head eunuch's silent shoulder shakes. The masks were originally meant to teach proper decorum until someone noticed the tree itself had developed a sense of humor. Its branches would shake during serious speeches, sending masks clattering like judgmental applause. Your fingers brush against the infamous jester's last chuckle, mold the moment before its owner was executed for joking about the emperor's new hat. The current groundskeeper swears it still giggles when the Lu wind blows just right. Ahead lies the tickling pavilion, where court physicians treated melancholy with feather dusters and strategic ajwain oil applications. The treatment worked surprisingly well until patients started faking depression for the free massages, leading to the first documented case of therapeutic fraud. That glint in the roots. A broken ha-ha stick, used to prod nobles into smiling during official portraits. The sticks were retired after one particularly stubborn prince got stabbed with his own during a diplomatic photo, resulting in the only Mughal portrait featuring a genuinely happy subject. As you leave, a sudden gust sets the masks clattering, not random noise, but the distinct cadence of the emperor's own laugh, captured in clay the day his favorite falcon stole his turban. The tree remembers joy better than the empire ever did. The map of lost waters. Your foot sinks into unexpectedly damp earth, the last trace of the Nakshari Ab, a hydraulic map of the empire's rivers made entirely of controlled leaks. Those suspiciously straight cracks in the paving stones? Not poor craftsmanship, but the remnants of the Yamuna Channel, where engineers recreated the river's exact flow rate using hidden pipes and timed siphons. The system was designed to test irrigation projects, until someone realized it could also predict droughts by seeing which rivers dried first. Your fingers come away muddy from the Sind Depression, a perpetually wet patch where the map's Indus River once flowed. The original engineer was from Sind and may have given his homeland an unfair advantage. During actual droughts, Sind's water supply mysteriously lasted weeks longer than the model predicted. Ahead lies the Whispering Delta, a network of terracotta pipes that amplified sound across the garden. Eunuchs would whisper updates into the Thrabian Sea End, allowing messages to reach the Himalayan sector in minutes. The system collapsed when a monsoon flood turned the entire map into an actual swamp, drowning several important messages about not creating swamps. That glint in the mud? A water die used to settle disputes about river rights. The 6 faces showed different outcomes: flood, drought, treaty, war, divine intervention, or, most frequently, roll again because the emperor changed his mind. As clouds pass overhead, the ghostly outline of the subcontinent emerges in damp patches and reflected light, an empire reduced to water stains and memories, still whispering its secrets to anyone who'll listen.